What's happening, Peter? Hey everybody, Chris the old ass retro gamer here, back with another one of my film collection live streams. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the Blu-rays, 4K UHDs, and 3D Blu-rays in my collection between the letters L and O. I know that seems like a lot since I always complain about how these streams go on for like way too long, especially when I think I have enough stuff to talk about to take about 2 hours of time, and usually takes about 3. Yeah, actually today, turns out I don't have a whole lot of Blu-rays and, well, movies in general between those letters. I have 2 decent-sized stacks and 1 really small stack. So we'll see how that goes. No guarantee that it will only take 2 hours. Probably will go to 3 anyway, because, yeah. So, welcome everybody tonight. Yeah, I'm really having a lot of fun doing these film collection live streams. I don't get to talk about my film collection or movies in general a whole lot on the channel. I try to. People don't seem to appreciate it, I guess. Not appreciate it, just like don't gravitate toward it. I think everyone just expects me to do like the video game stuff. And whenever I do like a Top 3 Tuesday where I talk about a film topic, it usually doesn't do very well. But that's okay. It's okay. I don't expect every video to do very well. But I'm just glad that people actually show up for these live streams. I'm so happy. So happy. So I'm glad that Peter's here. Keep the trolls away! So, every one of these live streams, I talk about any movie that I added to my collection since the last stream that fell into one of the previous videos brackets that I talked about previously. So I did pick up a bunch of new movies over the course of the last week. Troll bashing's my passion. Yeah. You're a poet and didn't know it, bruh. I picked up a bunch of movies. Only one fell within the previous letters that I've already talked about, and that is A Fish Called Wanda. I should probably unwrap this because the glare is kind of... There we go. So Arrow Video is a company that I talked about a couple of times on the channel. They're kind of like Scream Factory, but they're located in the UK. And they don't usually localize a lot of their stuff for the US and Canada for some reason. I don't know why. But sometimes they do. And I was glad that this is one of them. And they're also sold not only through their own website, but a lot of other websites carry their product and do sales on them, on their stuff also. So I was putzing around on, was it Instagram a week or 2 ago? And they're like, hey, a lot of our Arrow stuff is going on sale for like less than $10. So I picked up 2 movies. One of them you'll see in maybe 2 live streams from now. And this was the other one. I got this for a whopping $7.50. Brand new. Yeah, I guess they were clearancing them out, trying to get rid of them to make room for new Blu-rays, but whatever. One of the things about Arrow Video that I think puts them well ahead of Scream Factory when it comes to their product is, yeah, Scream Factory does a lot of extras on their stuff, but Arrow, I mean, for a comedy, this whole paragraph here is nothing but extras for A Fish Called Wanda. That's crazy to me, and a lot of it is brand new stuff. Holy crap. I'm trying to pick out something on here that is just like what? There's an on-location documentary on the film's locations by somebody. There's 26 deleted and alternate scenes introduced by John Cleese. Anyway, if you haven't seen A Fish Called Wanda, it's a comedy that came out in '88. It was kind of like a mini reunion for some Monty Python folk like John Cleese and Michael Palin. And it's like a crime caper comedy, sex comedy also, about a bunch of people that rob a bank, and somebody hides the key to the safe deposit box where the loot got hidden, and everyone's like scrambling to get it. And Jamie Lee Curtis is in it. She is freaking fine as hell in this movie. But Kevin Kline won an Oscar for this movie for Best Supporting Actor, and he is well deserved because he is hysterical. Everybody's funny as hell in this. What's up, Freaka 4? How's it going? This is one of my favorite comedies. I absolutely love it. So when I saw that there was a special edition of it, and since I didn't previously own it on Blu-ray, I don't even think I owned it on DVD, I had to add it to the collection. So there's that. Like I said, there's a couple of other new ones I got that you're going to see a couple of them today, but most of them are later in the alphabet. So we're starting off with L, going to the letter O, starting with Logan. Still haven't opened this. This is the 4K version of it. Saw this in the theater opening weekend, absolutely loved it. I was not a fan of any of the other Wolverine standalone films. I did not like X-Men Origins Wolverine. I thought that was terrible. The Wolverine was better, but I still think it kind of degenerated into just comic booky goofiness at the end. Even though the first half of it I thought was pretty good. But Logan is just good all the way through. It was like they finally got it right in this one. And it's all about like an older Logan who's been poisoned by the adamantium that covers his skeleton and is slowly killing him. Also, Patrick Stewart's back as Professor X, and he's kind of got like superhero Alzheimer's. It's that time of week. That's right, Ryan. Welcome. And it's fantastic. It's an R-rated X-Men movie, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. It's really violent. Introduces a new character who I thought was going to get their own spin-off series. Apparently, they're probably not, unless they make a TV show out of it or something. I don't know. But one of the best X-Men related films out there. I'm kind of sad to say that this is Hugh Jackman's last time he's ever going to play Wolverine. I'm kind of sad by that because he was perfect for the part, but you know, he's been doing it for like almost 20 years, so why not? So this is one of the new movies I just gotten within the last week. And it's called Looker. I used to watch this movie on cable all the time. It came out in 1981, so I'm assuming it was 1982 when it was on cable all the time. It's directed by Michael Crichton, the guy who wrote Jurassic Park, and Congo, and Sphere, and a bunch of other books. He was doing double duty back in the late 70s and early 80s as a novelist and a film director. He did the movie Coma, which is actually an adaptation of a book by Robin Cook. And then he did this, and then he did a movie called Runaway, which had Tom Selleck in it, and is one of my favorite, like, cheesy 80s movies about killer robots. Gene Simmons from Kiss plays the villain. I need to find a copy of that on Blu-ray. I know it exists. But this one is all about the dangers of... what was it? Capitalism, I guess. It's about a company that has been trying to find a way to sell their products, and they come up with like hypnotizing the people through their commercials. So they have been hiring all of these models, scanning them into a computer, actually asking them to get plastic surgery first to make them perfect, scanning them into a computer so they can create 3D models of them. This is an 81. They make 3D models of them in the computer, and then they are killing the models so they can't ask for royalties. But it's also they can make these 3D modeled commercials where they hypnotize people with the looks of the people, the perfect women, to get them to look in them, to get them to look them in the face in the commercials so they can hypnotize them to make them buy their products. And the plastic surgeon that did the plastic surgery on all of the women that got killed gets implicated in the murders, and he ends up going in and doing his own little investigation and finds out all about all the shenanigans going on. It's actually pretty cool. It is a little dated in some areas, but it was also really ahead of its time in the whole 3D modeling thing, like creating 3D versions or computer-generated versions of people. And it's actually kind of cool the way it works. And like I said, it sounds like an early 80s movie. It looks like an early 80s movie with the fashion and everything, but like when it comes to the subject matter, I was like, hey, that's actually kind of cool. And it still holds up. There's also a gun that hypnotizes you if you shoot somebody in the face with it. And then there's a lot of cool shots of people getting shot with a gun in the face and then getting punched and then not seeing who's punching them because they're in a trance. It's pretty cool the way they do it. Anyway, it's a pretty decent movie. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't already. There we go. Next up we have Looper. I saw this in the theater opening weekend. It's by Rian Johnston, the guy who apparently killed everybody's childhood with The Last Jedi. I love The Last Jedi. What's up? Kenna forever in our hearts, bro. I love The Last Jedi, which is because I saw this movie in the theater and loved it, is one of the reasons why I got really excited that Rian Johnson was going to direct a Star Wars movie. Because he takes like a typical time travel plot type of thing and puts his own little twist on it, just like he did with Knives Out, taking an Agatha Christie story and putting a little twist on it. And also with Brick, I think that was the movie he did before this, where it was like you think it's a teenage high school movie, and it turns out to be like a Philip Marlowe mystery. It's pretty interesting. But yeah, it's a time travel movie where people who are going to be assassinated by the mob are sent, forward in time? No, they're sent backwards in time and murdered. so that they're sent back in time before they were born and murdered, so that there would be no, so if like the body was found, there would be no evidence or any record of that person existing or whatever. And there's people in the past who have been hired to be the murderers, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays one of those people. He's a looper. He's one of the people that stands in a specific time. Every time he gets some money, he goes to this specific place. A person shows up from the future. He shoots them, kills them, gets rid of the body, and he gets paid lots and lots of money. And his future self, who is played by Bruce Willis, ends up being one of the people that gets sent to him to get murdered. And it turns into this whole big thing. And it's kind of awesome. I absolutely love it. It's a really nice twist on a time travel movie. I like it a lot. And we have Lord of War, Nicolas Cage movie. I had really no interest in seeing this because at this point in time, Nicolas Cage movies were kind of like all about him just freaking out. And I was kind of sick of it. But my brother told me I needed to watch it, so I rented it and I watched it, and it's absolutely fantastic. Cage plays an arms dealer who starts to see the damage he's doing around him as he sees like all the stuff that he's selling to people, how it's it's making him a lot of money, and his brother, who's Jared Leto, they're making a ton of money, but he sees the damage it's doing to everybody, and he starts to get second thoughts. It's really cool. The opening sequence during the opening credits follows the creation of a bullet from when it's made to when it ends up in a little kid's head. And it is really horrifying to watch, and it's just kind of like, oh shit, it's going to be like one of those types of movies. It's going to be really depressing. Can't wait. I know, I totally got to, dude. I absolutely have to. If this video does not get 200 views in 48 hours, I'm going to delete it so no one can watch it. It's a good movie. Talking shit. Oh, I started at the wrong end. I started at the wrong set. Shazbot. Damn it, Chris. You're so stupid sometimes. Anyway, let's start at the beginning of the L's, shall we? Instead of starting in the middle. All right. Chris is dumb. We all know this. I should have started talking about Land of the Dead. Oh, God. Here's another Scream Factory release. I got this from Limited Run Games when they released those Jackson Daxter games for the PlayStation 4. But yeah, Land of the Dead, one of my favorite films in George Romero's Of the Dead series. This is actually part 4, like almost 30 years in the making, I guess, or 20-some years in the making. This one is kind of ragging on George W. Bush. What's up, church? So it takes place, I do believe, in real time after Day of the Dead, which was like in the mid-'80s, and this takes place in the mid-2000s, where we're basically the minority, like, living people are basically the minority of the future. Zombies have basically taken over the world, but the thing is, they're evolving, and they are starting to learn how to communicate with one another, instead of just being individual zombies wandering around, not really, just going after the brains, or the meat. Now they're actually starting to be able to communicate with each other, and that is a problem, because now they are organized. And it's really interesting the way they present it, and at the same time, there's a group of survivors that are in this gigantic skyscraper that is run by the rich, run by Dennis Hopper, who is basically George W. Bush, and all of the lower income people are like kept outside the building, always trying to get inside the building by like buying their way in and stuff like that. And it's really kind of cool. George Romero always puts social commentary, like really awesome social commentary, into his movies. This one's no exception. It's really awesome. It has a great soundtrack by Reinhold Heil and Johnny Klimek, who worked on Run Lola Run. It's really gory. It's awesome. It's one of like the ones that I like when I would see it on cable, I would always have to finish watching it, or no matter where it was. It's like one of the most entertaining ones in the series, as far as I'm concerned. Organized zombies. And the cool thing is, this has not only the theatrical version, but also the unrated version on another disc, and each of them has their own special extras, which is pretty awesome. I highly recommend this one if you haven't seen it. It's a lot of fun. They played that at the 24-hour horror movie marathon at this theater that I go to in Chicago every October, and they played that 2 years ago, and it looked like most of the crowd had never seen it. And like I was just watching the reactions of everybody, and people were cheering, people were screaming and hooting and hollering. and it was like taking people by surprise, like by who was dying. And I was like, has nobody seen this before? And I remembered, oh yeah, it kind of bombed at the theater. So yeah. Anyway, Last Action Hero. This was I think a very underrated film. I just got this not too long ago. Actually, I bought it with the hopes that we'd watch it on the movie starting podcast, but no one has snapped this one up yet. But I have owned this previously. I saw it in the theater during its first run. It is so fun and so clever and so meta. I just can't help but watch it. But the thing is, like, everybody hated it when it first came out in theaters. I went and saw it in the theater with a bunch of people that I worked with. And one girl who I saw it with kind of looked at me when it was over, and I was like, how'd you like it? She goes, I feel like I just had my intelligence insulted for 2 hours. And I was like, what? I was like, have you never watched an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie before? And he was making fun of each and every one of them. I was like, that was awesome. I absolutely love it. It's a kid gets sucked into a Schwarzenegger movie. Actually, Schwarzenegger's playing himself. And then when he goes into the movie, he's playing like the movie version of, or like the character that he is in those movies, as well as his real self outside the movies. That would be cool, Captain. It is awesome. It is a great, it not only has really good action, but it is a great comedy. It is funny as hell. I love this flick. Even though it's all about a little kid who's obsessed with Arnold Schwarzenegger and getting sucked into one of his movies. The fact is, like, normally when a movie focuses around like a precocious little kid like this, in like the fish out of water story, it's usually kind of annoying. But the funny thing is, he's the only person who understands what's going on when he gets sucked into the movie. He sees all the cliches, he sees all the tropes, and he's trying to call them out, and everyone's just like, what are you talking about? You know? It's really clever. I love it. And then all the characters from the movie get pulled into reality, and like in the movies, people get shot 13 times and still be alive, or someone gets shot and 2 seconds later the cops show up. The bad guy in the movie goes into the real world and stands in the middle of the street and shoots his gun off like 12 times and goes, I just killed someone! Come and stop me! And people are like screaming, shut the hell up, out of the windows, and no cops show up. It's awesome. It's great. I love it. Here's a little diamond in the rough. It's called The Last Dragon. There's always someone in the closet. Yep. God. I still think my favorite line is when Schwarzenegger makes fun of his own name. When the kid tells him, your real name is Arnold Schwarzenegger, at one point, and he goes, you're an actor, you're playing a part, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about, and then later on, the kid says something else to him to try to make him realize that he's in a movie, and he says, don't forget, I'm the famous comedian Arnold Braunschweiger. It's like, what? Last Dragon's a movie that got a ton of play in my house when I was a kid. We rented it, and my mother absolutely fell in love with this. It is a kung fu movie that takes place in like Harlem. Has a great soundtrack. It's kind of a comedy. It kind of makes fun of martial arts movies like Enter the Dragon and all that kind of stuff. But it's also telling its own story, and it's kind of awesome. It is like, like a roller disco movie. This is a kung fu disco movie. And it is amazing. Vanity is in it. It's one of the first movies I think I ever saw her in. But it's a really good comedy. It's got a lot of great fight scenes. Ernie Reyes Jr., who was in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 as the pizza delivery kid, who ends up like tagging along with the Turtles. This, I think, was the first movie he was in. He was like 7 years old, and he's kicking the shit out of people older, like 30 years older than him. It is awesome. But, yeah, it's a fantastic movie. We did talk about this on the old podcast I did that was Van Damme That's Good, and absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite movies from my childhood. I could watch it any day of the week. Absolutely. Bruce Leroy. It's awesome. So, Last King of Scotland. This was the first movie I ever saw, what's his freaking name? James McAvoy in. And it's about Idi Amin and all the atrocities that he was pulling off back in the day. And I do believe he was like a reporter. Personal physician. James McAvoy ends up going to Uganda to be Idi Amin's personal physician, and he sees all the effed up shit he's doing, like, to his country and to the people in his country. And it's like, at first, you see Idi Amin as like this, he seems kind of like a nice guy, and he's really charismatic and all that, but then the whole thing, don't trust charismatic leaders type of thing, where once he starts to really see under the surface, he sees all this effed up shit that he's doing. It's really, really good. And I didn't really know anything about it. I got it when I was renting discs on Netflix. And it was just one of the movies I put in my queue. It showed up one day. I watched it. I was like, that was kind of fantastic. Why did I not go see this in the theater? It's pretty awesome. It's just really hard to watch sometimes when you see the shit that they have Idi Amin doing in that movie. So I bought this double feature for one of the movies, not for the other. And this is an action double feature with Bruce Willis. It has Last Man Standing and The Last Boy Scout. Which movie do you think I bought this for? The Last Boy Scout. I'm not a big fan of Last Man Standing. I saw it when I was working at that video store that I worked at in the 80s or the mid 90s, and I was just kind of like, no, don't need to own that ever. The Last Boy Scout I saw in the theater with my dad and my brother, and like we were cracking up. Yes, it's probably one of the most misogynistic movies you're ever going to see in your life because every woman in the movie is an asshole, and that's just because Shane Black wrote it, and for some reason at that point in time he like really hated women. I'm gonna open this up. But it is really funny. The shit that comes out of Bruce Willis's mouth is almost as good as the stuff that comes out of Samuel L. Jackson's mouth in Long Kiss Goodnight. It's pretty awesome. It is funny. Damon Wayans is in it also. It's like it's like a buddy cop movie, but nobody's a cop. Bruce Willis is a private investigator, and Damon Wayans is a football player who I think he'd just been fired because of drug use. But honestly, I'm drawing a blank at the plot all of a sudden. I don't know why. It's a hysterically funny action movie. A lot of great lines. Check it out. I have not watched Last Man Standing since the 90s, so I can't really comment on it. I am really tired again, everybody. I had a really long day. Last Samurai, one of my favorite Tom Cruise movies. Saw this opening night at the theater. It's pretty awesome. It is a little long, but it's all about Tom Cruise. And this also... okay, so I should probably talk about the issue. The guy who directed this, Edward Zwick, also directed Glory and Blood Diamond and I think one or two other movies. And the thing that I read when this came out was, why is Edward Zwick always making movies about the white guy coming to help out the other ethnicity and like solving all their problems for them? Like Blood Diamond is all about Leonardo DiCaprio going to Africa and solving your conflict diamond problem. And this is about, Tom Cruise coming and helping out the Japanese with whatever problem they had and stuff. I don't know why Zwick kind of gravitates toward those stories. Oh, he also did the Siege. But I thought it was pretty entertaining. It was the first time I ever saw, what's that guy's name? Ken Watanabe, who's in Batman Begins and Inception and the new Godzilla movies. It's pretty awesome. It's got some really epic fight scenes, but the thing was, I think it's just way too freaking long. They could have at least chopped 20, 30 minutes out of it, and it probably would have been okay. That was the movie Tom Cruise got braces for. The Last Stand. This is one of Arnold's movies that he made after he retired from being the governor of California. I loved it. I didn't get a chance to see it in the theater. It came and went really quick. But I did rent it the moment it came out from my local Redbox. And it's pretty awesome. Schwarzenegger is the sheriff of this small little border town, and a drug dealer or whatever is escaping from prison, and they're planning on going through his town because it's so close to the border to get to Mexico. And it's all about him and Johnny Knoxville and a couple of his really dopey deputies trying to stop that from happening. And it's really funny, and Schwarzenegger makes a lot of really funny jokes about him being old and just calling from the fact that he stopped doing action movies in the early 2000s to become governor, and now when he comes back, he's just kind of I'm kind of rickety. I kind of got hip problems. It's pretty awesome. I love it. It's really funny. That was my thing. I'm glad that Arnold didn't try to come back after the governor thing and try to do these serious action movies like he used to. He's making fun of the fact that now he is an old man doing action movies, and I think that was great. I just wish more people saw it. I would honestly like to see more of that character in movies, but that's never going to happen. The Last Starfighter, another one of my movies I used to watch all the time when I was a kid. Parents took me to see this in the theater. Absolutely loved it. One of the first movies to try to do photorealistic CGI. Tron had done it before, but it was trying to be video game looking, This was trying to be as photorealistic as they could possibly get back in the day. It's not quite there, but it's impressive nonetheless, especially watching it now, and you're like, this is 1984, people. Look at that. I mean, that's better than the CGI in Mortal Kombat, and that was in 95. It's really awesome. It's also kind of like a King Arthur type story, like a Sword in the Stone, but the stone, or the Sword in the Stone, is an arcade game. And this kid beats this arcade game in his trailer park, and it turns out to be a test for pilots to help fight in an intergalactic war. And it's really fun, really fantastic. There's a lot of great lines in this also. And like I said, the CGI is pretty awesome, especially for something that came out like in '84. The guy who directed that played Michael Myers in the first Halloween. Trivia for your ass. They're talking about remaking it again, and I was just like, no, just leave it alone. If anything, make like a real-time sequel. Like, what are these people up to now? I'd love to see what Rogan was up to, 30-some years from then. Him and Maggie out in space having space babies and stuff like that. Anyway, here's one of my favorite, like, cheesy science fiction movies from the 90s, and that's The Lawn Mower Man. Another one we're talking about, like, impressive CGI. Saw this in the theater opening night. This is loosely based on a Stephen King story, I do believe. But it's all about the dangers of virtual reality. I need to go throw away my PSVR. We all do, because it will make you a megalomaniacal killer. Yes. And you'll insert yourself into cyberspace and make everyone's phone ring at the same time. I think it's pretty fantastic. I really liked it. I saw it in the theater. The theatrical cut was okay. I thought it was cool. But I remember seeing a lot of stuff in the trailer that didn't actually end up in the movie. And it was because they ended up cutting like 40-some minutes out of the flick for the theatrical cut. And a lot of that, got cut and was left on the floor. But we get both the theatrical cut and the director's cut on here, which is fantastic. So if you prefer the theatrical cut, you can watch that. I prefer the director's cut. Has more character development, a lot more CGI stuff. Honestly, the reason this movie did so well at the theaters was because everyone was hyping up the fact that it had all this crazy CGI stuff in it. And in reality, I think it's a 2-hour movie, and there's like maybe 8 minutes of CGI in it. But it's basically about a guy who's mentally deficient, lawnmower for most people's lawns and stuff, and a person whose lawn he mows is a scientist who's experimenting with VR, trying to make monkeys into soldiers, like chimpanzees into soldiers, and he decides to try out his VR treatments on the mentally deficient guy, and it works. It does make him smarter, it makes him more aggressive, and he ends up becoming like this crazy serial killer and inserts himself into cyberspace and tries to take over the world through, the internet. It's pretty cool. A lot of the CGI is very impressive. I love it a lot. It's got a really cool soundtrack, and the acting in it is actually pretty good. It's one of the first movies I ever saw Pierce Brosnan in. I never really watched Remington Steele back in the day, so I wasn't really familiar, so this honestly was probably the first thing I'd ever seen him in, and then he ended up becoming James Bond like a few years later. And Jeff Fahey's great as Job, the guy who ends up getting turned into the genius. It's pretty awesome. I don't really remember a whole lot about this. I watched it once and then bought a used copy of it, but it's called Layer Cake. I do believe this is by Matthew Vaughn. Yep, Matthew Vaughn, the guy who directed the first Kick-Ass movie, the 2 Kingsman movies, X-Men First Class. I remember it's a crime movie. It's the first thing I ever saw Daniel Craig in as a lead, but it's kind of like trying to rip off a Quentin Tarantino movie, if I remember correctly, but it does it in a really good way. It's kind of like if you were to take Pulp Fiction and mix it with Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, because it all takes place in England. But I remember really, really liking it. I need to watch it again because I barely remember anything about it. But it does have Colm Meaney in it, who played Chief O'Brien on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I think that's the reason why I rented it to begin with, but that was before Daniel Craig became James Bond. Here's another comic booky one, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I know a lot of people don't like this movie. I think it's okay. I don't think it's like the greatest thing ever. I really wanted to see this in the theater because it was the follow-up to Stephen Norrington, the director. It was the last movie he made before this was Blade. And this was like his huge budget movie that he was given. I was like, I cannot wait to see what this guy does with a huge budget. He had like a mid-sized budget for Blade, and he pulled that off like without a hitch. I was like, now I want to see him with like hundreds of millions of dollars at his disposal. And it turns out this was like one of those movies that was just being sabotaged as it was being made. Sean Connery was being an asshole on set. The producers were being assholes. The studio was being assholes, and everyone was just coming down on Norrington. And he actually retired from directing because he didn't like the experience of this was so horrible. That he absolutely had to, he said he had to quit. He couldn't put up with it anymore. And actually after this, Sean Connery decided to retire from acting also. Kel Mitchell, that's Mystery Men. Welcome, Benny, by the way. It's based on a comic book by, who was it, Mark? I know he took his name off of it. Alan Moore. Yeah, Alan Moore did a comic book series. I think there's 2 graphic novels about the League, but it's basically take a bunch of literary characters and you put them in like a science fiction-y, comic booky storyline. So this has Alan Quartermain, Tom Sawyer, who was never in any of the comic books. They invented him or put him in this movie just because. Mina Harker from Dracula, Dr. Jekyll, the portrait of Dorian Gray, the Invisible Man, Captain Nemo, and the Phantom of the Opera is in here too. I enjoy it. It's fun. It's very flawed. I mean, you can tell where the studio interference really kicked in, and it's mostly because of Tom Sawyer, because he was not intended to be in here at all. But they were like, well, all these characters are British. We have to have at least one American character in there, so they put Tom Sawyer in there. Whatever. I think it's fun. I wish we got a sequel that could flesh it out even more, but like I said, studio interference kind of ruined the movie. A League of Their Own. This is the 25th anniversary edition. I saw this in the drive-in back when I was a kid. But baseball movie based on a true story about like when I think it was World War II, when all of the baseball players were drafted and sent off to war. They brought in a whole bunch of women to play baseball in their stead, and it's all about that. And it's really funny. It's great story, great acting. It's one of the only times I actually said Madonna was a good actor in the film. Same with Rosie O'Donnell. I'm not a big fan of Rosie O'Donnell, but she was really funny in here. But it's all about Tom Hanks and Gina Davis and Lori Petty, who I'm surprised they did not put on the cover here. But Gina Davis is great. A lot of great lines from Tom Hanks. This is when Tom Hanks was still doing like comedies. There's no crying in baseball. It's a fantastic movie and it still holds up. I think it's great. Legend. A lot of people hate this movie also. This is the Ultimate Edition. This has both the theatrical cut and the international cut. They call it the director's cut, but it's really the international cut because this is another movie that had a lot of studio interference while they were making it. So Ridley Scott, after he did Blade Runner, and I think one other movie, this was his follow-up, and it was a huge budgeted movie. One of Tom Cruise's, I think of the biggest budget movie Tom Cruise was in at this point. But they all did all these crazy sets, and they all ended up burning down due to some fire, so they lost a ton of money on that. They had to rebuild everything from scratch. And then when they finished making the movie, the studio was like, no, we don't want this movie to be 2 hours long. We want it to be like 80 minutes long so we can get more butts in the seats with more showings. Cut everything out. So the theatrical version has like all this plot cut out, all this character development, and it's basically just like one set piece after another. And it actually had a completely different score. Jerry Goldsmith had made the score for the original cut, and then when they cut the movie down, the score didn't work anymore because of all the shit that was gone. So they brought in Tangerine Dream to just kind of like throw a score together, which I do like. I love their score. But it's a really cool fantasy movie. It's beautiful to look at. It's got great sets, great special effects, great costumes. Tim Curry is freaking fantastic as Darkness. Like, you don't even know it's Tim Curry. That's how good the makeup is. It's fantastic. I'll fucking fight them who hates Legend. You would be surprised. When I saw this in the theater when I was a kid, it was kind of funny because there was obviously 2 groups of people who were interested in this movie. There was the punk new wave crowd who was there with the mohawks and the spiky hair with all the hairspray and the gel. They were on like one side of the theater, and like everyone else who was there out of curiosity went and saw it. They were on the other side, and it was funny. It was this weird segregation thing going on when I saw it. But like, my parents didn't like it. My brother thought he was. I remember him saying he thought he was bored. I liked it just because like it was so colorful and a lot of shit was going on. But I watch it as an adult now, and I'm like, okay, I see like all the set design and how great it was and the acting, and it's so much fun. But the theatrical version is the director's cut version is a lot darker. The Gump, the little kid imp character, has this scene where he like shows his true nature, and it's like him screaming at the camera, and like the whole world turns dark around him as he's screaming. It's crazy. The only thing I don't like about the director's cut is Jerry Goldsmith's original score. It's just really weird and kind of off-putting. I preferred the Tangerine Dream score from the theatrical cut versus everything else that's in the director's cut. But it's really cool. And like I said, anyone who doesn't like this movie can eat a dick. Yep, there's a director's cut. I highly recommend you check it out. I watched that on my old podcast too, which was the most popular episode we had of my old podcast. Especially in, Senegal. For some reason, people in Senegal thought that was the best thing of all time. Our podcast of Legend. Give me a little drinky drink. Here's another 80s cheese classic. Legend of Billie Jean. Helen Slater. Okay, so Helen Slater and Christian Slater in this movie. They are not really related, even though they are playing brother and sister in this movie. I used to watch this all the time. It was on cable. Basically, it's about a bunch of people that live in a trailer park. It's another class warfare type movie. A bunch of people that live in a trailer park are always getting picked on by the wealthier people in town. Christian Slater and his sister, Helen, they live like in a trailer park. Christian Slater buys a scooter. He saved money up for like 2 summers or whatever to buy this really nice scooter. And the rich kids trash it. And when he goes to ask them for the money to fix it, they refuse, beat his ass. Helen Slater goes to talk to the kid's father, who owns like a local store in town, and he tries to rape her. And when she tries to tell people about it, it turns into this big thing because while she's upstairs getting assaulted, Christian Slater breaks into the store, finds a gun in the register, and accidentally shoots the owner. He actually just is kind of looking at the gun. The guy says, "The gun's empty." He goes, "Really?" And the gun goes off and shoots the owner in the shoulder. They turn it into like, oh, the poor people were trying to rob my store and all that. And the thing is, when she's on the run and the popularity the guy that owns the store gets because of her being on the run, he ends up profiting off of it because he starts making like these Billie Jean t-shirts and stuff. And it's really kind of crazy. But it's got a really cool 80s soundtrack. Like Billy Idol has a song in Rebel Yell. It was the first time I ever heard Rebel Yell was in this movie during this mall chase scene. It's really great. The little girl the actress who plays Lisa Simpson is in this movie. And she has one of the best lines in film history when she gets interviewed by the police and they're asking her about the kid who destroyed the scooter. And she goes, "Binks did it. We know he did it. He's a piece of crap." And the cop goes, "How do you know?" She goes, "'Cause he's a fucker. That's how I know." It's a great movie. It's dated severely, but it's awesome. Being my most popular movie. Yeah, I don't know why. That podcast went crazy. Like, I had thousands of downloads, and I don't understand why. I was like, in Senegal, everyone went nuts for it. Leon the Professional, this is the international cut, but it also has the theatrical cut. I saw this in the theater. I was a huge fan of Luc Besson's previous movie, which is La Femme Nikita. It's one of my favorite action movies, still is. And I was dying to see this because I knew it wasn't a sequel, but I knew it was kind of building off of some of the stuff that was in La Femme Nikita. And I was really disappointed when I saw it. I absolutely hated it. I told everyone that I knew that I hated it. I got that job at that video store, and while I was at the video store, Professional was coming out on video. My boss asked me how many copies we should buy since I had already seen it. I said, "Buy 2. I go, because it's a terrible movie. And we bought 2 copies, and we couldn't keep them in for months. And my boss was so mad at me because he's like, "I should have bought 10. I was like, but the thing is, I watched it on video. My dad hadn't seen it in the theater. My dad rented it, and I sat there and I watched it with him begrudgingly. I was just kind of like, I don't want to watch this shit again. And I got it. I was like, my expectations were in some weird place. I thought it was going to be part 2 of La Femme Nikita. It's not. Even though it stars one of the same people from that movie, and he's playing a similar character. It has nothing to do with La Femme Nikita. I was like, okay, I was wrong. I made a mistake. And I actually went to the video store and told my boss, I just watched it again. I was wrong. We should have bought more copies. But the the international cut is kind of strange because it has all this weird pedophilia type stuff in it, where they kind of hint that Natalie Portman's character falls in love with John Renault's character. And they kind of hint at it in the theatrical cut. In the international cut, she like tries to sleep with him at one point, and then she goes out to dinner with him, and it's like the creepiest dinner you've ever seen in your life. It's a great movie. I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's about a hitman who takes in a young girl whose family was killed next door to his apartment, and he tries to like train her to be an assassin so she can avenge her family. They're actually talking about doing a sequel to it a long time ago with Natalie Portman reprising her role. They're going to call it Matilda and be about like her as an adult and all the shit she learned from Leon in that movie, how it's benefited her over the years and what she's up to now. I thought that would have been great, but they didn't pull it out. They didn't go through with it. Anyway, Let the Right One In. It's a vampire movie from Sweden, I do believe. And another one that I remember hearing a lot about online, and I finally watched it, and I was like, okay, it's pretty awesome. It's about a little kid vampire who's really not a little kid. They're probably like 200 years old. And how her current human bodyguard guy is getting way too old to take care of her competently while she sleeps during the day. So she kind of latches onto this little kid who she moves next door to him, and how she's trying to groom him to be her next guardian. And he like falls in love with her and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of creepy. But it's a great little vampire movie. It's kind of a unique take on a vampire movie, and then they remade it in America and kind of ruined it. It's a fantastic little movie. Like I knew nothing about it except the fact that people were saying it's a great vampire movie, and I watched it and I was like, that was different. I like different. There you go. Don't watch the remake. It's the exact same movie, just told in a bad way. Here's a real cheesy 80s movie that I saw in the theater. One of the few horror movies I was able to convince my parents to take me to that was rated R. It's Leviathan. It's got Peter Weller in it, Richard Crenna, Meg Foster with her crazy blue eyes. It's like this happened during that wave in like 88 and 89, where everyone was trying to jump on the ocean movie bandwagon because James Cameron, who had just done Aliens and broke all box office records and stuff, was doing The Abyss, which is going to be like this huge underwater adventure movie. Everyone had to jump on that bandwagon and try to get to theaters before he could. So there was like Deep Star 6, Endless Descent. I want to say there's like at least 2 other ones. And Leviathan. Leviathan was the one we ended up seeing in the theater. And it's basically The Thing underwater. A bunch of people who are miners at this like station that's at the bottom of the ocean find this wrecked Russian ship. And they find like one of the guys finds like a safe in there, and he brings it back thinking he's found treasure. And all he really finds is a bunch of documents, a videotape, and like a bottle of vodka and a flask. And it turns out that the reason the ship sank was because the Russians were trying to experiment with genetics and try to create someone who was like a human and fish hybrid so they could work under the ocean without the use of a suit. And it kind of made everyone into like these crazy mutant monster things, and they scuttled the ship and sank it, and then the Americans happened to find the remains, like I said. And Daniel Stern, who's the idiot who found the crate, he ends up drinking the vodka and turns into like a mutant monster and starts absorbing other people into his being, like in The Thing, to create this big fish monster human hybrid thing. And it's really cool. The monster looks really stupid when you finally get a good look at it because the thing was so bulky, I guess they couldn't really move it around. But the idea behind it is pretty cool, but it's still like really super cheesy. But it actually has a lot of really good performances. That's the one thing I say about it that's like a huge positive is it's a cheesy B movie, but everyone looked like they were really trying to like bring their A game, especially Peter Weller. License to Kill, one of my favorite Bond movies. I know I'm going against the grain. A lot of people say that they think Sean Connery is the best Bond. My favorite Bond is Timothy Dalton, because he is the closest to the novel version of James Bond that we ever got until Daniel Craig showed up and he started doing it. And everyone was like, this is the greatest. I was like, yeah, but Timothy Dalton did it first. This is the second and last movie Timothy Dalton did as Bond. This one, like, bombed. Like, hugely bombed. I guess everyone was kind of getting sick of the formula at this point. This came out, like, in 89. It was also going up against Batman and Ghostbusters 2 and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And this kind of got lost in the shuffle of all the big sequels that were coming out that year. But the thing is, this is probably the most violent of all the Bond movies up to this point. This one is the only one that ever got a PG-13. It's done in a realistic fashion. Bond is shown to be kind of an asshole, which is exactly what he was in the books. And yeah, it's pretty awesome. This one is the one that decided to stray from the formula, and everyone hated it because it did. But everyone was getting sick of the franchise because it was, the formula was getting stale. People need to freaking, make up their goddamn minds. But this is one of my favorite Bond films. You want to see a movie about a constantly naked vampire from outer space? How about Life Force? Another one I got from Scream Factory. This is one of the most expensive movies Canon Films ever made in the 80s. This was like when they were trying to become a legit studio, and they finally got I think they got like $300 million from like some deal that they made. And they were trying to like make all these real big budget movies to compete with the big studios. The only thing was Canon was known for making schlock. And even though they were trying to up their game, people didn't care because, even though they were making these big budget movies, they were still schlock, but they were just big budget schlock, like Life Force. But I like schlock. This is one of my favorite movies. Halley's Comet is passing Earth, and a bunch of astronauts are sent out to investigate it. Now that we can do that, and it turns out it's not Halley's Comet isn't a comet. It's an alien spacecraft that has space vampires in it. And we bring them back to Earth, and they start turning everyone into space vampires. They actually turn into, like, the shriveled dead. It's really kind of the physical... Or, sorry, I keep wanting to say physical media. It's not. The practical effects are fantastic. There's like when somebody gets turned into or gets the life force sucked out of them. The vampires don't really suck your blood; they suck your life force out. And it looks like electricity, and you shrivel up and basically look like you're dead. But you come back, and then you have to suck the energy off of somebody to get back to where you looked before. But the shriveled dead look that they made, these animatronic people, is fantastic. Heaven's Gate. All committed suicide in San Diego? Yeah, it might be Heaven's Gate. It's fantastic. It is cheesy as hell. Patrick Stewart is in here. Has his first ever on-screen kiss in this movie. It's just with a guy. He's possessed by the female vampire, and she kisses a guy in his body, but it's Patrick Stewart kissing a guy. It is really funny to see happen. But like I said, the practical effects are fantastic. The effects were done by Richard Edlund and a lot of people that worked on Star Wars. Like, they got like all the top people in special effects to work on this movie, and it bombed horribly at the theater. Nobody saw it. It became like a huge cult hit on video. And the problem was, it's another movie that had studio interference. They decided to edit the movie in post, completely cut out all the plot, character development, and all that. This is the international cut, which had all that put back in, which is great. It even has a great opening theme piece of music that they cut out of the theater, or the theatrical version, for some reason. And I was like, you know what? This movie needed this piece of music to get you in the mood, and instead we get like this really bad voiceover telling you like the history of what's going on in the movie. No. But it's a great movie. I highly recommend checking that out too. The Lion King in 3D. Saw this not only in the theater back when it was first released, but I also saw it on the 3D re-release with my ex at the time. And it still holds up. Saw this in the theater probably 6 times. Saw it in the theater maybe twice, and then a whole bunch of times at the drive-in because I found a way to watch movies at the drive-in without actually having to pay for it. But I don't need to talk about this. It's The Lion King. They made a really bad remake recently that didn't need to be made. And the other Timothy Dalton Bond movie is The Living Daylights. This is the one that did follow the formula, and it made significantly less money than the previous Bond movie, which was A View to a Kill, which was the last movie that Roger Moore was in. I don't know why, but I guess that was the whole thing where everyone was getting sick of the formula, and they decided to mix it up in the next one, which was License to Kill, and nobody gave a shit. But even though this was one of those formulaic Bond movies, I really liked it because I love Timothy Dalton as Bond. He plays kind of an asshole, more serious Bond, like from the novels. It's pretty fantastic. I love it. I love the theme song by Aha. Oh, God. 80s. And then we have those movies that I had already talked about. So, you know, Lord of War, Looper, Looker, and Logan. So, now I'm all caught up. Yeah, Life Force is fantastic. Like I said, the lead female vampire walks around naked the entire movie. Full frontal. No apologies. She's just kind of like, what else? Lord of Illusions is another one that I picked up through Scream Factory. It's the final movie that Clive Barker directed before he kind of gave up because this bombed really bad. And this is another one of those movies that I watched in the theater opening day. Went with a bunch of friends because I'm a huge fan of Hellraiser. I was a huge fan of Nightbreed. Went and saw this in the theater, like expecting the next big thing, and I was kind of like, that was really underwhelming, and I really hated it. And same thing that happened at that video store. Boss asks me how many copies he should buy because I'd already seen this movie, and I was like, I thought it was terrible. Buy one. And he did, and couldn't keep it on the freaking shelves. Everybody wanted to see it, and he got mad at me again because should have bought 5 copies, 6, 10 copies, who knows. But it was another one of those movies that got butchered in post. They cut a lot of stuff out, a lot of character development, a lot of plot. This is the director's cut. I do believe it has the theatrical cut also. But the director's cut is the one to watch. And the funny thing is, when I finally saw the director's cut is when I went, okay, now that is what I was expecting. I was talking about that 24-hour horror movie marathon that happens at that theater by me. They showed the theatrical cut of this the last time I went, which was last year. And I was sitting there going, see, this is why I didn't like this movie when I first saw it, was because it felt incomplete. They're not getting all the information you need. Because the people that were with me who had never seen the movie before were kind of like, that sucked. And I was like, yeah, I told you, you need to watch the director's cut. They put all the good stuff back in. And they were like, okay, and they did, and they were like, okay, you were right. Yeah, a lot of people hated it. Including me back then. But it's a really cool supernatural thriller. It's not really a horror movie. It's like the pre-Constantine You got Harry D'Amour, who's like a private investigator into the occult, and he gets called in to investigate the death of this guy named Swan, who is like the David Blaine of the mid '90s. He gets killed on stage by one of his illusions that he does, and he gets called in to investigate because they think there's foul play. And it turns out there's this whole end of the world plot thing going on that Swan's involved in, and it's absolutely nuts. It's awesome. I love it. The director's cut is the way to go with this. I definitely agree. Freak of Four. Scott Bakula, first movie I ever saw Famke Janssen in. You can see her right there. She was hot as hell back then. And you get a little nip slip in there from her too. I need to watch this again. I haven't watched this in probably a decade. The Losers. This is based on a comic book. I do believe it was like a one-shot. It was like a graphic novel. But it's about a bunch of assassins who get like double-crossed and them trying to get back at the people who double-crossed them. Has a great cast. It's Harry Dean Morgan, Zoe Saldana, Idris Elba, Chris Evans. I can't remember who the other guy is. Jason Patrick plays the villain. Columbus Short. That guy didn't go anywhere. I don't remember seeing him in anything after this. But it's a really fun, really funny, comic-y action movie. I really liked it. We saw this like the week before C2E2 hit. So they released this, and then like C2E2 happened, and I saw that sneak preview of Kick-Ass I talked about in the last stream, and then like C2E2 happened. So like this weird lead-up of comic book movies coming, or that happened right before C2E2 hit. I forgot I bought this. The first Machete movie, which was a spin-off of Grindhouse. The Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez double team they did, that double feature movie. Machete was one of the fake trailers that they put in that movie, and I guess it got so much attention that they decided to make a movie based on that trailer. And the funny thing is, Robert Rodriguez directed that trailer, someone else directed the movie, but all those scenes from the trailer are mixed in here, and it's weird when you see the two things mixed together. They don't match. But it's really fun, really funny. It's just like tongue-in-cheek grindhouse action all the way. Danny Trejo finally got like a lead role in a movie, which I thought was fantastic because I've always liked him. He's like real fun to watch on screen, especially when he's trying to tone down his shtick that he normally does, because he's always in like these R-rated movies playing some hard-ass assassin, especially in Robert Rodriguez movies. And then he does Spy Kids, and he's playing like this really nice guy who smiles all the time. And you're like, what? So it's kind of funny to watch him go back to playing like those badass characters in the lead role. And that was so popular, this made a ton of money. They went and made a sequel that nobody saw, called Machete Kills. The Mad Max trilogy. This has the original Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Yeah, Machete Kills was just kind of, I thought it was just kind of okay. I understood why nobody went and saw it, because it was just kind of like, yeah, we have no idea how to, we're going to make a movie, we don't know what we're going to do with it. Let's just throw Steven Seagal in it. I'm not a big fan of the first Mad Max movie. I love The Road Warrior, and I love Beyond Thunderdome. Beyond Thunderdome was one of those movies I watched every single time it was on cable. Road Warrior I didn't see until after Beyond Thunderdome, which was kind of strange, but it was R-rated. My parents didn't want me watching that, and I ended up seeing it maybe like 2 years after Beyond Thunderdome hit cable. But absolutely love the series except for the first one. But Fury Road! Mad Max Fury Road. That is my Mad Max movie. I saw this in the theater, I want to say 5 times. Saw it opening weekend with some friends in 3D, and all 3 of us were like, that was the greatest freaking thing ever. That wasn't a movie, that was an experience. And then I ended up seeing it pretty much every week until it disappeared from theaters. Absolutely loved it. I tried to see it in 3D as many times as I could. Didn't have a 3D TV or anything like that at home, so I had to get it while I could. Now I can watch it at home. The only sad thing is the 3D at home does not really hold up compared to what it was like in the theater. If you guys will excuse me, I will be right back. My stomach is starting to act crazy. I need to take care of something. I will be back in a couple of minutes. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that, everybody. I have stomach issues, and I'm surprised that this is only the second time I've been interrupted them during a stream because of them. But I apologize. Anyway, let's talk about Mad Max Fury Road. Yeah, I saw this like 5 or 6 times in the theater, and I think the thing about it that got me was George Miller, who directed this, is in his like 70s. This movie has this energy that just never seems to dissipate while you're watching it. It just is constant. It is just a constant barrage of action almost. And he has, like, the energy the movie has is more than most people who are like a third of his age have in their movies that they make. And it was just really impressive to me that he was able to keep this energy going the whole movie. But you can tell he'd been wanting to make this forever, because this movie has been in development for probably 10 years. He'd been trying to get it off the ground for like, I want to say 10 years, and then finally it happened. And he had to recast because Mel Gibson was way too old to be playing Max at this point, so they recast with Tom Hardy. He was a great choice. He plays a great stoic villain, or hero, villain. Charlize Theron was a great choice to play Furiosa, who's like his counterpart. And I love their relationship, where at the beginning of the movie they don't trust each other at all, but by the end of the movie they completely respect each other. There's no romance hinted at all between the two of them, which is another thing I was really thankful for. The last thing I want to see in Mad Max is a freaking love story. But I love all the characters in the movie. I love the arc of Nux, the war boy who ends up like, I don't know, just kind of like, because he gets ragged on by Immortan Joe, his cult leader guy, he ends up kind of teaming up with Max and Furiosa over the course of the movie, and kind of like seeing that his way of life is kind of pointless. I just absolutely love everything about this movie. The cinematography is great. The music by Tom Holkenborg is absolutely fantastic. I still listen to the soundtrack every day. I actually have the soundtrack on vinyl. Everything about it is fantastic. I cannot say enough good things about it. It's just a perfect movie in my eyes. I'm just sad that the 3D doesn't hold up so well on home video compared to what it looked like in the theater. The cool thing about this is you don't realize just how much of this movie is CGI. The CGI is so good, you can't tell. The mountains, that whole scene that takes place like in that gorge where they're going through that mountain pass, and that action scene takes place where Furiosa was going to trade the gas for safe passage through that gorge. All those mountains were fake. They were filming out in the open desert. Those are all fake. It does not look fake. It is fantastic. The CGI is flawless. Perfect movie in my eyes. I could watch this anytime. It's also one of those movies that not a whole lot of talking in it, but you don't miss it because it's perfect visual storytelling. Mallrats. I was talking about Kevin Smith's Clerks and Chasing Amy and all that in a previous stream. This was Kevin Smith's big breakout movie. He did Clerks. It was super low budget. He made it for like $30,000 or whatever. And because of the success of that, Universal was like, here's a couple $1 million. Go and make a bigger budget raunchy comedy. And that's exactly what he did, except it takes place in a mall. But this is where he introduced the whole Eschew-niverse, where Jay and Silent Bob show up in every movie that he does from this point on. Started off in Clerks and continued here, which is great. Everyone I know thinks like this is like their favorite Kevin Smith movie. I was like, to me, I like the ones that feel more personal, like Dogma or Chasing Amy, or even like Red State, something like that. Don't get me wrong, I think this movie is hysterical. It is funny. I still quote shit from this to this day. I just don't think it's like the end-all be-all Kevin Smith movie of all time. But I do enjoy most of them. I don't enjoy them all, Freakafor. I do not like Jersey Girl or Yoga Hosers. Red State, I think, is my favorite movie of his. Anyway, so I'm sure all of you know about The Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal and Red Dragon, which was the prequel that got made after Hannibal came out, and Hannibal was a huge success. Did you guys know that there was a Silence of the Lambs movies made in the early 80s? Or a Hannibal Lecter movie made in the early 80s? This is Manhunter. This is Red Dragon without the Red Dragon name. Michael Mann, who ended up doing Miami Vice, did a couple of my favorite movies. He did like Thief and The Keep, and eventually he went on to make Heat. This was his first like crime movie that he did, he got the rights to Red Dragon, although the producers did not want to call it Red Dragon because they thought everyone would mistake it for a kung fu movie. So they renamed it Manhunter. But this is the first appearance of Hannibal Lecter in a film. He's played by Brian... Oh, what's his name? Brian Cox, who played Stryker in X-Men 2. And he does a really good job. He makes him extremely creepy in a different way that Anthony Hopkins' version of Hannibal Lecter was creepy. The thing is, Hannibal Lecter does that slow talking and he stares at you intently as you're doing it. The thing about Brian Cox's version of Hannibal Lecter is he's talking to you like you're just an average Joe, and he just creeps under your skin as you're doing it because he just completely takes you by surprise. Like he works his way in, he lowers your defenses, and then he just creeps his way in, and that's what he does. And it's really cool to see happening in here. And William Peterson plays the lead in this, and it was Edward Norton in the remake. I do not like the remake at all. I prefer this version. Great soundtrack. It's filmed extremely well. It does have a couple of weird art house touches to it because Michael Mann tended to do that kind of thing. But it's a fantastic movie, and I do believe this has the director's cut on here also, which I don't remember enjoying very much. I remember the theatrical version was my preferred version of the two. But it's fantastic. I prefer this way more than Red Dragon. I mean, if you were to rate the Silence of the Lambs movies, Silence of the Lambs is obviously going to be at the top. This is my second choice, followed by Hannibal, then Red Dragon, then Hannibal Rising. But it's a fantastic movie, and not a lot of people know about this. I remember one of my coworkers was talking about Silence of the Lambs and all that, and how he had finally gone back and watched the sequels to it, and the prequel. He'd watched Red Dragon. I was like, yeah, but have you ever seen Manhunter? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I told him all about it. I'm like, it's Red Dragon before Red Dragon was made. I mean, it just didn't get called Red Dragon because of stupid studio politic crap. And he was like, no, I never even heard of it. So I showed it to him, and he goes, that was really cool. And he's like, and I normally don't like 80s movies all that much because he was a 90s kid. But whatever. I do have a copy of this on Blu-ray already, but I found a 3D version of this at Half Price Books for like $6, so I picked it up, and that's Man of Steel 3D. And I talked about this in the stream where I was talking about like my collector's editions of Blu-rays and stuff. I really like this movie. I like this one a lot. A lot of people had a problem with him killing Zod at the end of the movie, but cause his code is that he doesn't hurt people, he doesn't kill people. I'm like, yeah, but when did that kick in? This is supposed to be his origin. Maybe because he killed Zod is when he says, I will never kill again. Whatever. I didn't think too much about it, but I absolutely love Man of Steel. I thought it was a great superhero movie, and I thought a great reintroduction to Superman after like Superman Returns bored everyone to death. So I'm not going to talk about that one all that much. But the 3D on that one does hold up. It does hold up very well, especially during the big fight with Zod over Metropolis at the end. Especially that shot where the camera is like in Superman's armpit as he's flying through the air like this, and he keeps punching Zod, and the camera keeps like showing his fist going into Zod's face as he zooms up to him. Every time he punches Zod, Zod goes flying in the background, he flies up to him again and punches him in the face. Yeah, the 3D is great in that one. Here's another Canon big budget movie. This is actually the movie that bankrupted Canon. Life Force started it. Invaders from Mars remake continued it. This finished it off. Masters of the Universe. I love this movie. Yeah, this came out way too late to get on the bandwagon of Masters of the Universe. By the time this came out in, 86, I want to say, He-Man was kind of gone. Like, nobody really cared anymore. She-Ra might have still been pretty big, but He-Man was no. So they were like 3 years too late to the party for this to actually be relevant. But didn't stop me from going to see it, convincing my mother that I would die if I didn't get to see this in the theater opening weekend. And the funny thing is, even though He-Man was on the downturn at that point, when we got to the theater, there was a line out the door to get tickets to this. So it was still obviously pretty popular, but it just didn't have staying power. That was the problem. Everyone who was a fan of the franchise or the property saw it that opening weekend, and after that, no one else was left. So I saw it in the theater opening weekend. I absolutely loved it. Was Dolph Lundgren a good He-Man? I say so, but I was kind of pissed off that they cut all of his dialogue out because he couldn't do the American accent very well, or he hadn't learned how to do he couldn't cover up his Norwegian accent very well, I guess. So they cut out a lot of his dialogue and focused it mostly on the Earth people, like Courtney Cox and Robert Duncan McNeil, which is kind of stupid. But the thing to watch this movie for is Frank Langella as Skeletor. He freaking knocks it out of the park. You can tell he is having so much fun playing Skeletor that he convinced the filmmaker, was it Gary Goddard who directed this? Yeah. To film that little thing that happens after the end credits where he pops up out of that water where you think he died and goes, "I'll be back," because he wanted to play him again. And I'm pretty sure they'd have been happy to have him come back because it sounds like he just had a blast making the movie. But it's stupid 80s cheese, but for canon, it's one of their better movies. Like, it actually has like a polish to it that most of their movies didn't have. Even their big budget ones like Life Force and Invaders from Mars. This one actually felt like a legit movie. Like, it was a B movie premise, it was a B movie property, but it looked like an A movie, I guess. Because like the model work and the practical effects and everything is just fantastic. It's just that, they ended up being cheap at the end, and the big fight we're expecting between He-Man and Skeletor ended up getting cut short because they ran out of money. That's why the whole final fight scene is happening in the dark, because they ran out of money and they had to come in on the weekend and quickly shoot something before the Teamsters found out or whatever it was. So that's why that fight is the way it is. But I love it. I still think it's a guilty pleasure of mine. I enjoy it. Speaking of guilty pleasures, The Meg. This is based on a series of books by Steve Alton. I have read every single one of them. I am, like I've said, I don't know how many times, I'm deathly afraid of sharks. I am deathly afraid of the ocean. So what do I do when a movie about sharks in the ocean come out? I go see them first weekend. I play every game that has to do with them. I just played through Maneater. But I read every single book in this series. This is based on the first book, even though it is very, very loosely based on the first book. There's like 6 books in the series, but it's about a giant megalodon shark surfacing from the Mariana Trench and chomping on sunbathers. But it's like done in such a way that it's very fun. It's like, I never took the books as being like these fun, like action movie type things. It was the books were trying to be very serious, trying to be as scientifically accurate as you can, even though the way that the guy kills the shark in the first book is to get his submersible lodged in the shark's mouth, get out of the submersible, go into the shark's belly, cut out its heart, and watch it sink into the ocean dead. I didn't get to see this in the theater in 3D, but the thing is, this is one of those DVDs or Blu-ray sets I had to get from Korea, because it is a 4K, a 3D Blu-ray, and a regular Blu-ray all in one. This took about a month and a half to show up, and it was kind of expensive, but I thought it was worth it. So I finally did watch the 3D version of it, and I actually put it in my second video about 3D Blu-rays you need to watch on your PSVR. This was like in the mid-level, like a number 4 or 5 maybe. It worked really well. But it's a really fun action movie with Jason Statham, and like anything with Jason Statham in it, I go see anyway, because I think Jason Statham is probably my favorite action star out there. And I can't wait for the sequel. It's just a fun, stupid monster movie that I thoroughly enjoyed, even though it is cheesy as hell. Here's another cheesy 80s movie. Probably no one has heard of this. Okay, I'm going to hold this up. I'm going to say its name. Let me know if any of you have seen this. Megaforce. Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? I didn't get a chance to see this in the theater. This was another one of those movies that bombed hard back in the 80s. This came out like in 84, I want to say. Does it say? Well, this Blu-ray came out in 2010. I know that. I think it came out in 84. You have not heard of it? Okay, so it came and went real fast. It bombed hard. Okay, so it was trying to be like G.I. Joe the movie. So it's about like a military force that is like so special nobody knows about it. They have all these crazy toys at their disposal, like the G.I. Joe. They have all these crazy vehicles and stuff. They are led by Barry Bostwick from Rocky Horror Picture Show, who for some reason is always wearing an American flag bandana or whatever. And it also stars Persis Khambatta, who was in Star Trek The Motion Picture. She played Ilia. This was like her second big American movie. And it's just like this really cheesy action movie that was essentially trying to be G.I. Joe without the G.I. Joe license. Because there's flying motorcycles, There's these Jeeps that are cloakable, or like these tank-looking things that are cloakable. They're not able to be seen by radar. It's absolutely crazy. You can even see the flying motorcycle on the cover. I hadn't seen this in probably 20 years when I finally found the copy of the Blu-ray. It's a Japanese Blu-ray I had to get from Japan that is actually region-free, so it plays. The audio mix on this is terrible. I had to turn my stereo system like all the way up in order just to hear what people were saying. But the visuals, the picture is actually really nice. But it is cheeseball in the extreme, and the thing was, John Hancock, another game YouTuber, had talked about this. There was an Atari 2600 game based on this movie, which I own. I should probably get it. Yep. This movie was released by 20th Century Fox back in the day, so naturally 20th Century Fox made an Atari 2600 game based on it also, and it's actually really fun. You play as the main guy, Barry Bostwick, in that flying motorcycle, and you're like bombing stuff, kind of like Scramble. It's really fun. But it's a super cheeseball movie. Some people will be able to take the cheese, some people will not. I can handle it. I really enjoy it. It was on cable a lot back in the day, but outside of that, like, I'll bring it up to people, and people were like, "Mega what?" Memento. This is one of Christopher Nolan's first movies. I want to say it's his second movie. The first one I do believe was called Following, and then he did this. This has Guy Pearce and Carrie-Anne Moss in it. It's fantastic. It was a unique way of storytelling. I want to say, oh god, what was the name of that movie? Irreversible, I think, came out before this, where the movie was told in reverse order. That came out first, and then I do believe that Nolan kind of copied that idea for Memento, because the whole movie is told in reverse order, and there's little flashback scenes that are in black and white that kind of are interspersed to break up the sections as they move backwards, that kind of are explaining the plot to you. And it's all about a guy who has like no short-term memory. His wife was murdered. He's on the lookout for the murderers. He quit his job. His whole life is devoted to finding the people who murdered his wife. And every time he finds some sort of a clue, in order to remember it, he tattoos it somewhere on his body. So his whole body is just covered in tattoos with like the clues written on it. And as the movie goes on, you realize that there's some things that are going on that don't really make a lot of sense, and are kind of something that someone with no short-term memory would do to keep themselves entertained. And then when the big twist happens at the end, it's just like a big holy shit moment. That's what's really been going on this whole movie. It's fantastic. It was pretty awesome. And the funny thing is, I went to see this in the theater. It was like a weekday. I had the day off. A friend of mine had the day off. We went and saw this movie like midday. And then my brother just randomly walks in, because my brother was going to college at the time. He just randomly walked into the theater in the same screening that we were in with his backpack, and he pulled out like a big container of Kentucky Fried Chicken and started eating it in the middle of the theater. And we let him sit there and eat it, and then finally I was just kind of like, "Who said you could bring that food in this theater?" My brother turns around, he looks, and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" I'm like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And in KFC, no less. It is a fantastic movie. The movie he made after that, Insomnia, which I do believe was a remake of a Norwegian or a Swedish film or something like that, I couldn't stand. I just could not stand it. So, I want to say I talked about this in one of the earlier film collection streams about John Carpenter, how like I love like 90% of his movies. There's some movies that he does which are kind of like, I think it was when I was talking about that movie Elvis of his that I picked up that I still haven't watched. This is one of the movies I'm not a real big fan of, but technically, in the special effects department, this movie is amazing. This movie pioneered a lot of CGI stuff. This is like one of the few movies that John Carpenter made that had a huge budget. And the funny thing is, every time he makes a huge budget movie, it bombs. He did that with The Thing bombed. He did this with this bombed. He did it with Escape from LA, that bombed. And then every time we would make a low budget movie, that movie would make a killing. I don't understand. It's like his fans knew that when he would get a big budget, like, it usually wouldn't turn out very well. Except The Thing. The Thing is fantastic. But anyway, I'm talking Memoirs of an Invisible Man. Maybe it was just because Chevy Chase, he was losing his luster at the box office at this point in time. But yeah, this is like John Carpenter's take on an Invisible Man movie where Chevy Chase ends up becoming the Invisible Man, and the government is looking for him because they want to turn him into a weapon. The leader of the government people that is following him is Sam Neill. He's great as a villain. I swear he should play villains more often. But like Chevy Chase is just an arrogant prick. I mean, everything I've read about him, heard about him, it's just he seems like a really unpleasant person. Why do you keep casting him in movies if no one wants to work with him? Anyway, he looks like he's enjoying himself in here, but from what I understand, you watch the behind-the-scenes stuff, the stuff he had to go through to get the invisibility effect to work. I remember they had to paint him completely head to toe in black paint and even black contact lenses that covered his entire eyes. And I think the only thing that you could see sometimes was his teeth. It was just crazy. But this was one of the first movies that used CGI to like blend a blue screen with like live action plates. It's really impressive. It still holds up. This came out like in 92. So this is the year before Jurassic Park. This is a year after Terminator 2. I mean, it's got some cool things going on in it. Like I said, the effects are the reason to watch this. But John Carpenter had already made this movie, and it was called Starman, which is what I think people, once they read the reviews about it and people were comparing it to Starman, it was like, what's the point of seeing it? It was just John Carpenter trying to, get some money for a change, make some real money, and it kind of backfired. So this movie bombed horrifically, almost ruined his career. He ended up going back and making independent movies again, real low budget movies. I think the movie he made after this was In the Mouth of Madness, and that got him right back on track. Because that was a huge movie. That movie made crazy money. But yeah, this is one of his lesser movies, for me at least. I don't really have many of the Men in Black movies. I do have Men in Black 3. The only reason I bought this one was because I went to the Exchange one day, and they actually have a Section 4 3D Blu-rays. And I was like browsing through, and I was like, well, I don't have like a couple of those, so I picked up this, and I can't remember what the other one might have been. The How to Train Your Dragon in 3D. Yeah, Starman is great. I have it on Blu-ray. Spoiler alert. But yeah, I found this in 3D. I did see it in 3D in the theater. I still prefer the first movie. Didn't really like the second movie because it was kind of like The Hangover 2. It was basically just a rehash of the first. So I didn't really get into it. The third one tried to do something different with the whole time travel thing. And the 3D for the time travel scene where Will Smith like jumps off the Chrysler building and like they show him like stretching out. It looked really cool in 3D when I saw it back then. And the movie is actually pretty fun. Like my brother and I went and saw it while we were visiting our relatives in Ohio. It was playing at the Discount Theater. And we were both kind of like, nothing else was playing here that I would remotely want to see. I don't even really want to see Men in Black 3 after the second one. But we were like, it's the lesser of the evils. Let's go see it. And we both walked out going, that was actually pretty fun. So I'm not too sad that I own this in my collection. I do need to get a copy of the first movie, but I have a feeling I'm not going to find it alone. I'm probably going to have to get like a double pack with part 2. Here's another awesome 3D movie from the 80s. I talked about this in my first 3D Blu-rays you need to watch on your PSVR, and it's called Metal Storm, The Destruction of Jared Sin in 3D. The title is misleading. There is no destruction of Jared Sin in this. He just kind of like zips away and to show up in a sequel that never got made. But this was from Empire Pictures, Charles Band, who ended up creating Full Moon Films. They were one of the people that really shepherded the resurgence of 3D in the early 80s. Like, I want to say Coming At You started it, and then Empire Pictures just completely embraced it for like 2 or 3 movies. And this was one of them. I never saw this in the theater, never saw it in 3D before. The first time I saw this, my parents rented it while they were going bowling. My parents were on a bowling league on Sunday nights when I was a little kid. And we'd get a babysitter. My parents would always go and rent a movie for us to watch while the babysitter was here. This was the movie they rented for us that week. And my brother and I were both like, this is so stupid, but it's so cool. Because it's kind of like Star Wars completely on a desert planet. It's like Mad Max and Star Wars combined. There's even dialogue taken right out of Star Wars in this. The only person who ended up going on to be a star in this movie is Kelly Preston, John Travolta's wife. This was like her first movie. And her father and her father are like crystal miners, and then the Jared Sin character is like trying to collect all these crystals because he uses them to collect people's souls. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's a science fiction movie. They have weird rules in the movie. And Jared Sin, his son Ball, who's this guy with this weird metal arm in this movie, and the only reason his character exists is so his metal arm can extend in 3D in your face and shoot green goop on the camera. They kill her father, leave her there. Don't realize that she is there. She's actually hiding in the mine. But they kill her father, kill her, and take the crystals. And when the lead character Dojin, who's kind of like the Mad Max Luke Skywalker Han Solo combo of the movie, shows up to rescue her, she's like, "There's nothing left for me here. Take me with you," just like Luke did in Star Wars. But it's really cheesy. The movie is basically just a giant excuse to showcase things poking you in the eye in 3D. But it looks goofy when you watch it in 2D. But when you watch it in 3D, it's kind of fantastic. The 3D they planned out works so freaking well that I talked about it in that video. I highly recommend it. If you can stand some cheese and some really goofy special effects, because this is a very low-budget movie, I highly recommend checking it out. You won't be disappointed. It is just super goofy. I love it. I loves it. No, that's from Shout Factory, so you could probably still find it on their website. So go to, like, it's either Scream Factory or Shout Factory was carrying it. Okay, actually, I'll just look. Yeah, it's through Scream Factory. Yeah, you could probably still find it there. It's probably one of their discounted movies, too. Because that came out, like, 5 years ago, I want to say. Okay, so this movie has a weird story. Anyone ever heard of the Miami Connection? So, this movie was made in the mid-'80s. I want to say mid-'80s? Doesn't say. Why don't you tell me information I need, DVD? Why am I talking with a Russian accent? I don't know. Okay, so this movie was this low-budget kung fu action movie made in Florida in the mid-'80s. It was this Korean director. It was his first movie. He was like a doctor or something, and he wanted to get into movies, so he like got all this money together, hired the guy that ran the local martial arts center, who's the lead on the front. What's his name? YK, was it Kim? Yeah, YK Kim. He was the guy who ran like the local kung fu school or whatever, the local martial arts school. They shot this movie super low budget with a bunch of local actors. Thought they had a big hit on their hand. Released it in theaters for a sneak preview. And like the local papers eviscerated it. They were like, this is the worst movie ever made. This movie is terrible. It's going to bomb. Nobody go see it. They gave it like 0 stars. And because of those reviews, the director never released it. He just shelved it. He was just like, yep, I don't need to get embarrassed by this. He's like, whatever. And he shelved it. But word had gotten out, like, over the years. It took, like, 20 years. The word kind of got out about it, and people were trying to find a copy of it somewhere so they could actually see it. Eventually, Draft House Films got a hold of, like, the original print and screened it at a theater just to say, this is, like, this lost movie from the 80s. And everybody that saw this in, like, 2012 or whatever absolutely loved it. They were like, oh, my God, that is, like, a camp classic. Why did we not see this before? Why did they shelve this? So they ended up like remastering it and giving it like a proper sound mix and released it to like art house theaters, and it actually played at the Music Box by me, which is that theater that does that 24-hour horror movie marathon every October. And I remember going to see Tron. They were playing a midnight screening of Tron, and at the theater next to the one, or the auditorium next to the one I was seeing Tron in, was playing this. Well, this was playing, and I had no idea what it was. So eventually I rented it and I watched it and I was like, oh, this is that movie that I saw at the Music Box that one day. I need to check that out. So I rented it, and holy shit, is this movie awesome. It is so funny because it's like these people... Okay, so nobody in this movie is a real legit actor. It's like all... Like I said, the lead guy in the movie was an instructor at a martial arts school. For some reason, his version of martial arts is to take his shoes and socks off and stick his bare foot in your face. Every time there's a scene where he's sparring with like his roommates in like this college quad, and every time he kicks someone or he goes to kick someone, he stops and puts his foot right in their face and lets it sit there, and they show like a close up of it in their face, and they're going like. There's a scene where he force feeds one of his roommates grapes, holding the grapes with his feet. I don't get it. The guy who directed this movie had a foot fetish. I don't get it. But it's about a rock band, about a group of friends who are a rock band during the night, and like vigilantes at night also, that go to college during the day, and they all live together. Their band is called Dragon Sound. And they only sing songs. I actually have, when I bought this off of the Draft House website, I got like this special edition thing where I got a single on vinyl of the 2 songs that the band sings in the movie. The songs they sing are the plot. The first song they sing at the beginning of the movie is called Friends Forever. And it's basically them singing about themselves. So you get all the character development wrapped up in a pop song. And it's hysterical. And then halfway through the movie, when they introduce the villains, who was a gang of ninjas, they sing the next song, which is called Against the Ninja, which is them declaring war against the ninjas. It's amazing. It is freaking awesome. And the final 30 minutes of the movie is the goriest martial arts fight you will ever see in your life. People are getting kicked in the head so hard their heads pop off their shoulders type of shit. It is craziness. I love it. I need to watch it again. It is so good. Haven't opened this one. I bought this not too long ago, but I have seen this. It is an adaptation of a Clive Barker short story, Midnight Meat Train. This is directed by Ryuhei Kitamura, who is a director from Japan who I absolutely love. He did a bunch of movies that I saw, starting off with this one called Versus. I'll be talking about that when I get to that movie in the V's. Versus is like one of my favorite martial arts movies of all time, and from that point on, I was like, every movie this guy makes, I'm going to watch. This was the first movie he made in the U.S. So what do? He makes like these weird kung fu. His movies always end up having martial arts in them. He did Godzilla Final Wars in Japan. He did Azumi, which is based on a manga. But yeah, when he comes to America, what's the first thing to do? Let's give him this really graphically violent Clive Barker adaptation. How about we play to his strengths? But the thing is, he did a really good job with this. I've read the short story. There's not a whole lot to it. But he managed to flesh this out. This is, what's his name? Bradley Cooper, like one of his first like leading roles. I want to say he was still on Alias when he made this movie. But I think it's kind of fantastic. I rented it, and I was kind of apprehensive because I was like, when they brought John Woo over here, it didn't work out so well. I don't know how that's going to pan out. I thought it was great. Although his follow-up movie, which is called Everyone Dies? Or... Oh, I can't remember the name of it. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. But this is actually pretty cool. Basically about a reporter who's trying to... What was it? He was investigating like these murders, and he finds like a cult in like the train and the underground subways and stuff. I need to watch it again. I haven't seen it since I first rented it back in probably 2008. Yep. I need to watch it again. I just remember the ending. The big twist at the end was pretty awesome. But it's not really like the short story. Here's a cool one. Guillermo del Toro, his first American movie, was one of those movies that got effed with in post by frickin' Harvey Scissorhands Weinstein. That guy needs to fucking back off of the movie, or on the directors and all that are making his films for him, because every time he like cuts a movie up, nobody goes to see it, is because they know something's up. Guillermo del Toro's first American movie is Mimic. And this is one of those movies that got absolutely butchered in the editing room after the fact because Harvey Scissorhands wanted to tighten it up, make it a little bit faster. His whole thing is like, cool, you got a 2-hour movie? I love it. But you know what? It would be better if it was 80 minutes. And they end up cutting out all the plot, all the character development, and everything. That happens a lot with that guy. How he was still in charge of a film distribution corporation, I don't know. What's up, FG? How's it going? But this is the director's cut of Mimic. This is the re-edited version to put all that stuff that got cut out by Harvey Weinstein back into it. And now the movie makes a lot of sense. It's basically about a bunch of geneticists to create like this hybrid cockroach that is going to kill these other cockroaches who are spreading this disease that is killing children. 5 times the water. So these cockroaches are spreading this disease that's killing all these kids in like New York. So these geneticists make these genetically engineered cockroaches to kill the other ones, and then they're supposed to die out after one generation. The only thing is they didn't, and they evolve to start mimicking humans, and they grow to be human size, and they are like actually like going to the surface and killing people, and it's pretty awesome. It's a really cool take on a monster movie. I really enjoyed it. The theatrical version, I remember seeing it in the theater like opening weekend going like, it feels like it got cut up in post. You can totally tell. There's like so much stuff missing that you can tell they're about to talk about something that's important to the plot, and all of a sudden it just cuts to another scene of people getting murdered. But yeah, I highly recommend checking out the director's cut. It's the version that should have come out in the first place. And Harvey Weinstein just, like, seriously, he needs to stop. And I'm glad that he's kind of in hard times right now, because that guy seems like an asshole. Actually, he is an asshole. Anyway, Minority Report, Steven Spielberg movie with Tom Cruise, like the first collaboration they did, and then they did War of the Worlds after this. Rico. Yeah, Freako 4. Check out the director's cut if you can. Like, I found that at Best Buy. But yeah, precogs, the police of the future have these psychics who can predict crimes and stop them before they happen. The only thing is, like, what's the moral implications of that? Yeah, they might have seen it happening that way, but what if that person changes their mind and they didn't see that? So is an innocent person getting put away for a crime they still haven't committed? It's kind of awesome. It's based on a Philip K. Dick short story, which I've read, and it's fantastic. This is loosely based on it. It follows a lot of stuff from it, but it's pretty cool. The only thing is, this is one of those Spielberg movies that has like an unnecessary fifth act. Or just keeps on going. But outside of that, it's pretty fantastic. It's a pretty cool, like, chase movie. I really enjoy it. First time I ever saw Colin Farrell in a movie. Picked this one up not too long ago. Got this with a bunch of other Scream Factory collector's editions, and that's Misery, Stephen King adaptation that came out like in the early to mid-90s. Does it even say what year it came out? Give me my information. 1990. Wow, I did not realize this. Wow. I was still in high school when this came out. Shit. But it's directed by Rob Reiner, of all people. Meathead from All in the Family. But this is like one of the ones that I wouldn't really consider horror. This is more like a thriller. Kind of like Gerald's Game is kind of more of a thriller. About an author who's been writing this series of novels about this character named Misery. And I think he killed her off in one of the books. And he gets into a car accident out in the middle of nowhere. Gets rescued by this kind of crazy woman who is obsessed with the books and Misery. And she basically holds him hostage until he writes a version or a new book where they bring the character back. And if he does not comply, she does things to him, like break his ankles so he can't escape type of thing. It's a really tense, really good thriller. I really like this one a lot. It was like, watch that on a double bill with Dolores Claiborne. That's another one I need to find on Blu-ray. So I can talk about a whole series of movies here. Yep. So, I got the whole thing of the Mission Impossible movies. Oh, the Scream Factory. Yeah, it has a lot of the new stuff that's on here. Is it's a restoration from a 4K master. It has a new interview with director Rob Reiner and new interviews with the makeup effects artists, including Greg Nicotero, and the rest of the stuff is transferred over from the DVD edition. But yeah, Mission Impossible movies. I have all of them. I have Part 5. I have a special edition that was in the box sets live stream that I did. So I won't be talking about that here. But I got the original, which I love. This was like a huge movie back when it first came out. Like this and Twister like shattered box office records at the beginning of summer. Was it 95 that year? 96. I love the fact that they decided to make this one an espionage movie and not just a straight up action movie. There's barely any action in this movie. I want to say the finale on the train is the only real action scene in it. It's an espionage movie. Yes, everyone had a problem with the fact that Mission Impossible as a TV show, it was all about the team. And when it came to the movie, it's all about Tom Cruise's character. But don't forget, the beginning of the movie, he had a team. They just all get killed, and it's about him trying to find out what happened to them. So it kind of makes sense. But it's a fantastic movie. Brian De Palma, this reignited his career. Yeah, it's still fantastic. This Brian De Palma like became another mega power because of this movie being a huge box office hit in the early or the mid 90s, and I absolutely love it. And then there's Mission Impossible 2, which when it first came out I thought was absolutely fantastic. I was like, fuck Mission Impossible 1, Mission Impossible 2. It was one of those movies that the more I watched it, the more I started to hate it, and now I can barely sit through it. This is like when John Woo, you could tell they were having problems with the script. I remember there was like, I don't know if there was a strike going on, but there was like problems with the script, and they were like constantly rewriting it as they were filming it. And it shows. And then the thing that I thought was the funniest was the guy who plays the villain in this movie. What's his name? Doug Ray Scott, the guy who plays the villain, was originally hired to play Wolverine in the first X-Men movie. The only thing was, while they were finishing up the filming of this movie, I think they were already in the post-production process, The Matrix came out, and everyone was like, all of a sudden, shit, martial arts are huge now. Everyone wants to have kung fu fights in their movies. Let's go back and do some reshoots real quick and have the finale be a big kung fu fight. which is kind of why if you look at Tom Cruise and Doug Ray Scott during that big final fight scene, they look a little bit different because I think that they had started preparing for some other roles, like Doug Ray Scott started preparing for Wolverine. Doug Ray Scott couldn't do the X-Men movie because he had to go back and do those reshoots because of his contract. So he missed out on being Wolverine and probably ruined his career because he wasn't Wolverine, because you saw what happened. No one knew who the hell Hugh Jackman was until he played Wolverine. All of a sudden, he's this huge megastar. I'm pretty sure the same thing would have happened with Doug Ray Scott. But yeah, he effed up by agreeing to do those reshoots. But yeah, this is one of those movies that I watch now and I cannot get through it. Like, I just can't do it. It is so cheesy and it is so nonsensical. Aside from the big fight scene at the end, I really can't do it. It has the dove. It has all the doves. That's the problem with John Woo. He needs to frickin' get away from all of those like cliches that he created in Hong Kong. I did not need to see a glowing dove fly into that room before Tom Cruise walks past that flaming doorway. It is the dumb. I remember when I saw it the first time in the theater, I went like, "Oh God!" Now you know you're watching a John Woo movie. There's a freaking dove in it. But like when the last Mission Impossible movie was coming out, Fallout, I wanted to rewatch all the Mission Impossible movies like in a row. It took me 3 days to watch this because I kept falling asleep. Then we have Mission Impossible 3, which was J.J. Abrams' first theatrical film. And it's basically a remake of the pilot of Alias. And I remember it really rubbed me the wrong way when I first saw it. I was like, what are you doing? Like, really? Like, someone gives you $100-some million to make a big old action movie, and the only thing you can come up with is to retool your pilot for Alias as a Mission Impossible movie. What the fuck? But it still has its moments. It's fun in parts. I like the big twist about his wife, you know, the thing with that they set up at the beginning of the movie compared to what really happened. But outside of that, I was just like, what are you doing? I'm surprised he got more directing jobs after that, because I would have been pissed. But that movie actually made not a lot of money. I was surprised we actually got a fourth film. That's why it took so long for them to get around to making a fourth film, because this one didn't make a whole lot of money. This was like right around that time when Tom Cruise started doing his couch jumping thing. And then we have the fourth movie, Ghost Protocol, which I think is absolutely fantastic. This is the first live-action movie by Brad Bird, who did The Incredibles and Ratatouille. And holy crap, I'll miss timing you out. They're really good. Some of them are really, really good, Cabot. You should really watch them. I mean, the first one, I'd say watch the first one and 4, 5, and 6. You can skip 2 and 3. But the first one, 4, 5, and 6. Ghost Protocol. When I saw this in the theater, I went and saw it on the IMAX, and it blew my mind. So much so that I had to grab some friends and go and see it the following weekend with them to be like, look, I know 2 and 3 weren't the greatest. You guys need to see this to believe it. And they were like, okay, we are back on board with this franchise. This one is pretty awesome. It has a great, like, this is when Tom Cruise started doing his freaking crazy stunt bullshit, where he wanted to climb the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, and they actually let him do it, which I don't understand. But it's pretty fantastic. And then you have what was the second one? Rogue Nation, which is all just as awesome. It kind of went back to the espionage feel of the first movie, which I really liked. And then we have the final movie that they've released. This is not going to be the final movie for long, because they're filming parts 7 and 8 back to back right now, or they were before the whole plague hit. But Fallout is my favorite movie in the franchise, bar none. It was also my favorite movie that came out, whatever year it came out, like 2 years ago. This movie blew my mind. It is so good. It's the first movie to be a direct sequel to the movie that came before it. They've never carried over villains, or, you know, they've carried over characters, but because they're part of the team. They've never carried over a villain and a storyline from a previous movie. This is the first movie to do that. And it does it so well. They introduce Henry Cavill, who is a freaking amazing villain. Everything about it is just perfect. I absolutely love every minute of it. And the thing was, I did not realize that this was released in 3D in theaters, in IMAX 3D. And I remember, like, right before it disappeared from theaters, I walked into my local multiplex and saw that they had the IMAX 3D poster up by the box office. And I was like, fuck. But this never got released in 3D anywhere on home video. I checked eBay, I checked everywhere. This never got a 3D home release. So I ended up just settling for the standard old 4K version. But it's fantastic. More Mission Impossible. Yep. They were filming part 7 and part 8 together, back to back, when COVID hit. And now it's on hiatus until they, you know, I guess they're starting to film other movies. I want to say They said they're going to start back up at the end of July, filming the other 2 movies. We're probably not getting them until 2022 now. Then we have Stephen King's The Mist. There's another movie that you're either going to love it or you hate it. I absolutely love it. I never read the story. I remember I was kind of reluctant to see it at first because The Mist sounds very much like The Fog. And I love The Fog. And I was like, I don't know about that. But my brother and his girlfriend were like dying to see it. And they were like, come on, dude, you got to come with us. And then my parents ended up tagging along too. And we went to see it and it blew my freaking mind. I thought it had the ballsiest ending of all time. Like, there was no way I expected that ending to actually happen. Go back to the Mission Impossible movies. The ending took me completely by surprise. Like I said, completely ballsy ending. I don't know if the Stephen King story, ended up going like that. I need to actually probably go and read it. I need to find out which collection that's in, because I know it was a short story. But anyway, absolutely loved it. My brother loved it. His girlfriend at the time kind of looked at us, and she's like, what's the moral of the story? Wait 5 minutes. And I was like, shut up, just shut up. My mom said she wanted to stand up and scream at the screen, you don't end a movie like that! I'm like, not every movie has to have a happy ending, Mom. But I absolutely love it, and there is a alternate black and white cut of the movie on this. That's why this is this collector's edition. I guess originally Frank Darabont, who directed Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile, 2 other really great adaptations of Stephen King movies, or Stephen King novels, originally wanted to shoot this in black and white because he saw it as kind of like an episode of The Twilight Zone, like a feature-length episode of The Twilight Zone. He wanted to do it in black and white. Disney wouldn't let him. So one of his stipulations was, okay, fine, if you won't let me do that, when it comes out on home video, I want to be able to put a black and white version of the movie on one of the releases, and they said fine. And it's on here. And you know what the funny thing is? It works even better in black and white. But it's a fantastic, horrific movie at times, but I highly recommend it. Here's a fun one. Monster Squad. What happens if you take Universal Monsters and mix it with the Goonies? You get the Monster Squad. I absolutely love this movie. Is it in here? Hang on. I need to check something real quick. Oh, I got rid of it. Shit. Damn it. Okay, so Fred Decker, who I think had been writing movies for a while, his first directorial movie was called Night of the Creeps. If you've never seen Night of the Creeps, get off your ass, go find a copy of that, and watch it. You will love it. Absolutely. This is his follow-up. Bigger budget, obviously. And the funny thing is, this was also written by Shane Black, who wrote Last Boy Scout, and Long Kiss Goodnight, and Lethal Weapon. So, yeah, he had to start somewhere. But it's basically the Goonies meet the Universal Monsters, and it is funny as hell. Wolfman's Got Nards. That's the name everybody remembers from this movie. I can't talk. Top 5 modern black and white movies. Yeah. It works better. It does. I mean, I loved the movie in color when I saw it. Watching it in black and white, and it just adds another creepy level to it. It's fantastic. I still prefer The Fog. The Fog is still my favorite. The original Fog, not the remake. The remake is shit. But Monster Squad is hysterical. This is one of those movies I put on when I'm a little down in the dumps, not feeling good, just kind of pissed or something. This movie cheers me up immediately because it's so funny and charming. Absolutely love it. They're still talking about remaking that. Don't touch it. Found this at Half Price Books for like $5, and it's a 3D version of Monsters, Inc. And I still haven't been able to bring myself to watch the second movie because I heard so many bad things about it. But the first one's, I remember being pretty fun. I haven't watched this one since probably the theater. But I did like it back then. And I found this. Oh, this was the other movie I found. No, I got this at the exchange. This is the movie I found when I got Men in Black 3. But I haven't watched it ever since I bought it. So I need to check this out in 3D, see if it actually holds up. I never saw it in 3D. I think this was post-converted into 3D, actually. Yeah, like Lion King. That explains why it has this crazy cover. Anyway. I have every single John Carpenter soundtrack on my hard drive. Every single one of them. I love his music, dude. I have a bunch of soundtracks of his on vinyl. But I just remember this being really cute. I need to watch it again because I don't really remember a whole lot about it. And then we have Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the 40th anniversary edition. Okay, so, the thing about this movie is I knew about Life of Brian. I had seen parts of Life of Brian on cable. I knew about the Flying Circus. I'd watched episodes of that on cable growing up. I knew about it. I had never seen the Holy Grail before. Yeah, I need to check it out. I'll probably watch it this weekend. They Live is awesome. What's up, old dirty gamer? Welcome. Oh my god, so many people are here. I like it. I love it. I didn't see this until probably 1993. It was my senior year in high school. And the funny thing is, I had these two girls that I started hanging out with from school. They were quoting it one day while I was hanging out with them at school, and I was like, "What the hell are you even talking about? Like, I don't understand. What movie are you quoting?" And they're like, "Monty Python and the Holy Grail." I'm like, "I've heard of it, but I've never actually seen it." And they got mad at me because I'd never seen it. So they immediately invited me over to their house to watch it. Me and my friend Charlie, Epic Die Studio. I don't know if he's here tonight. They invited us over, and we watched it, and I fell in love with the movie. I was like, "Okay, where has this movie been all my life?" It is hysterically funny. It is so good. and from that point on, I was joining in on their little quoting sessions at school. I immediately ran out, bought a copy of this on VHS, and I watched it probably every weekend. I liked it that much. It is so good. It loosely is all about King Arthur looking for the Holy Grail, but there is just so much other crap going on in this movie that has nothing to do with that. It is so good. And, like, at work, when shit starts to go downhill, I always say, like, when people are like, "Well, you're going to be here for another hour and a half or whatever working because we got something going wrong," and I will look at everybody that I'm working with and there was much rejoicing, and everyone will go, "Yay!" Old ass retro gamer and old dirty gamer, damn right. I fought in your general direction. Your father smelt of elderberries. Oh god, now all this shit's coming back. I still do the neat thing at work every once in a while too. Oh, it's so good. Which leads us to The Life of Brian. The Immaculate Edition, I do believe it has a bunch of extras on it. A timeless epic. It's funny. Look, a timeless epic that's only 93 minutes long. So I had seen bits and pieces of this on cable, and I never actually had seen the entire movie as a whole. So I would see these bits and pieces, and I was like, that's not funny. Like, I remember Monty Python stuff being funny, because I'd seen Flying Circus. So, finally, I want to say after I saw The Holy Grail, I went and I tried to watch all the other movies. So I watched Meaning of Life, which I had never seen, and I watched this all the way through, and I was like, okay, now it's funny. Now I get it, because I see the whole movie. It's not as good as The Holy Grail, but it is still pretty funny in its own right. The whole thing with Brian trying to jump off that building and getting, like, picked up by those aliens and shit out of nowhere, it's like, what? It's pretty good. I like it. I think when it comes to the movies, Holy Grail is my number one, Meaning of Life is my number two, and this is my number three. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's not as good as Holy Grail or Meaning of Life. Here's my favorite, one of my all-time favorite Bond movies, but it's like one of the ones that everyone said ruined the franchise. The Meaning of Life, yeah, the one where the guy eats like his weight in food at the restaurant, and then he gets a mint put on his tongue, and he like expands until he explodes. Yep. Have you had enough, or shall I insult you for a second time? Oh God. There is a couple of times where I'll be driving with somebody at lunch, I'll be going to lunch at work with a bunch of my coworkers, and someone else. I usually am the person who drives to go to lunch, but when someone else drives, a bunch of people I work with are freaking grannies on the gas pedal. Like, they just want to drive below the speed limit, and every once in a while I want to pull out 2 coconuts and just start doing this like we're running, like we're like a bunch of horses just walking along the street. And I've told them, I was like, I wish I had 2 coconut halves right now. He died with a falafel in his hand. Never heard about it. But we're talking Moonraker. This was a response to Star Wars being a huge hit. So naturally, let's pick the Bond story that actually had some little outer spacey thing in the novel version, and let's just turn it into a big old space opera for the movie version. And I saw this in the drive-in when I was a kid, and I freaking fell in love with it. I've always liked John Barry's scores for the Bond movies, but this one was like on a whole other level. It was like, he did this and Black Hole back to back, and they sound similar, but like, I was like, okay, from now on, I'm listening to everything that John Barry does score-wise. Even when I was a little kid, I was like, I love the music in this movie. James Bond in space. It's cheesy. It has, like, stupid shit in it, like pigeons doing double takes, and, like, a gondola that turns into a hovercraft. But it's, like, it's hard to explain. It's when I watch it, I get the feeling like the people that were making this movie were like so tired of making these movies. They're like, how about we just have some fun? And they just like let loose and just did crazy ass shit. And that's why I think I like it as much as I do, because it just has this really fun feel to it. Like they're just like, the hell with it, let's just go crazy. They have a huge, but this is like one of the highest grossing movies in the Bond franchise, by the way. I absolutely love it. I can watch this one any day of the week, even with the shitty parts in it. It is so fun. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of Roger Moore as Bond. This was like, after this he did For Your Eyes Only, which is one of my all-time favorite Bond movies too, because it was like, after you do the crazy outer space epic Bond movie, where do you go from here? You bring it back to reality and you ground it like they did with For Your Eyes Only, which is why I love it as much as I do, because they did the right thing. They didn't try to top this because there was no way they could, until Die Another Day came out, and that ruined the franchise. But that was the last Bond movie with Roger Moore that I actually liked. I like Spy Who Loved Me. I like this, and I like For Your Eyes Only. I think that's it. Every other Bond movie with Roger Moore in it, I could do without. Octopussy, I think, is like one of the worst Bond movies. Okay, here comes some video games. Lightning in space, like Truxton. Who wants some video game movies? I got a bunch. Okay, so we gotta talk about one really good one, and we gotta talk about one really, really, really bad one. We're talking Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat Annihilation. I will take this out of frame right now so people don't start vomiting all over their computers as they watch this. Mortal Kombat. This is not going to be the longest. There's only like a little stack like this left. I don't have a whole lot of movies in the M's and the N's, which is kind of funny to me. Mortal Kombat is still my favorite video game movie of all time. Like, I saw this in the theater, I'm not kidding, 7 or 8 times. That's probably the only thing that Annihilation has going for it. Peter, you're not wrong. Yeah, as you can tell, I'm a big Mortal Kombat fan. So naturally, I found out that there was a midnight showing going on. You know how nowadays, it hasn't happened recently because of the whole plague, but like when a big tentpole blockbuster is coming out, they'll release the movie like on Thursday night, like at 7 p.m. when the movie is really supposed to open on Friday. Back in the 90s when this came out, it was really rare to have anything like that happen. So I was working at the video store. I found out that a theater by my house was going to be having a midnight showing on Thursday night, right before it opened on Friday. And I was like, look, I'm Mortal Kombat guy. I need to see this movie midnight showing. I cannot not go to this midnight showing. I absolutely have to do it, or my life depends on it. And I convinced my boss to let me leave early that day so I can go with a bunch of friends. And we got in. And from the moment the movie started, I was just like this. Like, I was just slack-jawed. It completely blew my freaking mind. I was mad that it was PG-13 because, let's be honest, the movie or the video game is all about the gore. But as I was watching the movie, I was like, okay, they're doing the things in the game that would be gory, but they're doing it in a non-gory way, but it was also kind of cool. Like, they did Scorpion's fatality, but it didn't kill anybody. Like the guy blocked it, or Johnny Cage blocked it with his shield. We got to see his fatality. I was thrilled. And in return, Johnny Cage does his friendship on him, which is awesome. We got to see Shang Tsung's fatality, which never really had a lot of gore involved when he just sucked somebody's soul out. We got to see the stuff that we wanted to see. This was the first movie that had martial arts in it as the main thing that was doing that was involved in the action scenes that I like fucking latched onto. Like after I watched this, I wanted to see every martial arts movie ever made. I loved the actors in it. I thought everyone was perfectly cast. I loved the fact that they decided to like use Enter the Dragon as the story that they used, the outline that they used for the movie, because it is a tournament storyline in here too, so why not? I loved, like, what's it called? Christopher Lambert as Raiden. I thought was a weird choice at first, but when you see him in the movie, you're like, okay, that is perfect. Everything about it. The soundtrack is fantastic. That soundtrack was so good. I was loaning it to friends all over the place because everyone wanted to hear it and get a copy of it. It's so good. I cannot say anything bad about it. I mean, yeah, some of the CGI has not aged very well, and there's a fly in here somehow. Okay. It went try to go in my ear. Fuck you, fly. Yeah, the only thing that I can say in here that hasn't aged very well is just the CGI, but everything else is amazing. Still one of my favorite still my absolute favorite video game movie of all time. So, naturally, when they announced that they're making a sequel, because the first one ended in a cliffhanger, I'm dying to see part 2. So, I call out of work the Friday that it's released so I could be there at the first showing, and I go to see Mortal Kombat Annihilation. I will not be showing this in the frame. And it was one of those things where my expectations were like so high, and the movie disappointed me so much that I actually kind of, like, I was in denial about it. Like, I remember I had already made plans to see it with a group of friends that night, but I needed to see this, first thing in the morning, that I called out of work to go see it, and I was like, it was okay. And then I went and saw it with the friends at night, and their reaction to it took me by surprise, because when it was over, they all looked at me like, that was terrible. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's Mortal Kombat. I saw Mortal Kombat Annihilation in the theater, I want to say 4 times. And it took me seeing it 4 times in the theater to come to the realization that it was god-awful shit. And it was like it happened again with episode 1, with Phantom Menace. It took me seeing Phantom Menace in the theater like 4 times before I realized I hated it. And it was just because I had such high expectations, and I'm such a Mortal Kombat fan, I was making excuses for liking it, and I just slowly started to realize everything that was wrong about it. Half the cast didn't come back, and the people they cast in place of them were freaking awful, especially James Remar replacing Christopher Lambert. If they had only waited 3 months to start filming, they could have had Christopher Lambert in the movie because he was making another film at the time that they were supposed to shoot this. I thought he would have been pivotal to make this movie work. The only people that came back were Robin Shao as Liu Kang, and the actress who played Katana, I can never remember her name, Talisa Soto. And I think a couple of the martial artists who played, I think the guy who played Scorpion came back to play Scorpion again, and the guy who played Reptile in the first movie came back and he played Sub-Zero's brother. Even the fights I thought were pretty terrible. There was like such bad wire foo in it. The guy who shot the first movie, or the guy who directed the first movie, Paul Anderson, who ended up doing the Resident Evil films, was asked to come back to do this. He wanted to do Event Horizon, but he said, if you guys can hold off when I'm done with Event Horizon, I'll do that. And they're like, no, we need to do it right now. He was like, okay, well then I'm out. So they promoted the cinematographer from the first movie to be the director on this. The guy had never directed anything in his life, so let's give him this $40 million movie, that's based on a video game that he knew nothing about. And it shows, because the cinematography is terrible, the special effects are terrible, just the framing of things is bad, the acting is freaking abysmal. It has one of the worst dialogue recitals in the history of films, like when Sindel first shows up at the beginning of the movie and Katana goes, "Mother, I thought you were dead." She goes, "Too bad you will die." And it's so bad. Oh god, it is so bad. It makes me mad now thinking about it that I actually saw the movie 4 times in the theater. I normally would not have bought this because I dislike it so. I don't have to be a Mortal Kombat collectophobe or collectathon thing. I don't need to have every Mortal Kombat everything in my collection. The reason I have this is because when I bought Mortal Kombat 9, the one that came out for the PS3. When I bought that, it came in a bundle with the 2 movies on Blu-ray. And it was only like $5 cheaper. $5 more expensive than the game itself. So I was like, yeah, okay, fine. I wanted the first movie on Blu-ray, and I was like, if I got to put up with having this in my collection, I'll keep it. Oh god, have you? No. I will actually just walk away from the movie and sit on the toilet instead of watch this. If we do that, Cap. Mark my words. They fucked up some of the powers of the characters. They decided to leave Sector out of it for some reason, but they gave Smoke Sector's powers. I'm done talking about that piece of shit. But the thing is, being the huge Mortal Kombat fan that I am, and witnessing that cinematic abortion over there called Annihilation, I took it upon myself, being the diehard fan that I am, to fix that by writing a 3rd film that fixes all the problems that movie had, to put it on course. And I completely finished it. I wrote it from beginning to end. It is really bad, because it was probably the first script I think I'd ever written. Every character in that script was bipolar, including Liu Kang. And I've been trying to rewrite it just for shits and giggles. I don't have any delusions. That's never going to get made into a movie. I've just been trying to rewrite it to see if I can fix the issues that I created with writing that screenplay. But it's not good. That movie is terrible. But then we have Mortal Kombat Legends Scorpion's Revenge. I ended up getting the 4K version of this. I found this. I had bought this through a seller on Amazon, and it got lost in the mail. And the guy that I had bought this from, I had said, hey, this thing has been sitting at the post office for like 2 weeks almost. I think it's safe to say that it's been lost. And he was like, give it another week. And I was like, yeah, fuck this. So I went to the local Target to do some grocery shopping, and I found the last copy they had of this in 4K. And I bought it. And then a week goes by, and I told that guy, I'm like, yeah, give me my money back. That thing's lost in the mail. So he goes, yeah, fine, sure, whatever. So I got my money back. I bought my copy. And then I want to say 2 weeks later, that copy that I bought from him showed up in the mail. This is what I think is supposed to be the first film in a series of like these animated direct-to-video films based on an individual character from the Mortal Kombat universe. So the starting off point is this whole Scorpion's Revenge thing. No, I will say that the people that I've allowed to read my script thought it was better than Annihilation, but like the whole thing is like, they're like, why are these characters arguing with each other? They have nothing to argue about. I was like, I don't know. I've never written anything before. Leave me alone. Anyway, so this came out 2 or 3 months ago, and I thought it was supposed to coincide with the release of Mortal Kombat 11, because I remember hearing about it a long time ago. I thought it was supposed to be like alongside of Mortal Kombat 11. This came out. This actually more coincided with the release of Aftermath than the full version of Mortal Kombat 11. But anyway, it focuses at the beginning on Scorpion. So it's like the whole backstory of the fighting, or the rivalry between Scorpion and Sub-Zero, like what that was all about. And they've covered it before in some of the games. They've covered it in the Mortal Kombat Legacy TV or internet show. But they kind of build on it here also. And then the thing that bugs me about it is, it's not bad, it's good. The thing that bugs me is all of a sudden they shoehorn in the tournament from the first game. So those stories are supposed to be about that core character group of Liu Kang, Kitana, and Johnny Cage, and they're just kind of like side characters in it because it's all about Scorpion for some reason. And I wish it was just all about Scorpion and his thing with Sub-Zero. I wish it was just all about that and didn't really include the tournament at all. But from what it sounds like they're going to do is they're going to keep releasing different movies in this series that deal with one specific character. It's really cool. It's gory as hell. Everyone's getting ripped in half or ripped vertically in half, or getting their head ripped off. It's pretty cool. Like I said, I just wish it was just all about Scorpion, not dealing with anything that has to do with the tournament. I actually kind of like Mythologies. I don't think it's great or anything like that, but I play it. I put up with the shitty controls because I like the story so much, because it gives you a lot of background into the Mortal Kombat universe. I have a 4K version of The Mummy, the one with Brendan Fraser from 1999. This was another one of those like surprise movies. I remember seeing the trailers for it, and I was like, isn't that supposed to be a horror movie? Why are they making it look like Indiana Jones? But my brother wanted to go see it, so he and I went and checked it. We went and checked it out like opening weekend, and we were like, holy crap, that was so much fun. I had seen the director's other movies that he made before this. Steven Sommers did a Huckleberry Finn movie, which I apologize, I did not see. Then he did a live-action version of The Jungle Book with Jason Scott Lee, which I did see with a girl that I was trying to date. Didn't work out. Which was pretty good. And then he did Deep Rising, which was like a monster movie at sea, which is fantastic. So I was really thinking that he was going to try to do like another gory-ass monster movie with this, and he was like, no, I'm going to make a PG-13 action-adventure movie that kind of has some horror elements in it. And I was kind of like, I don't know about that. But like I said, when I saw it in the theater, I was like, okay, that was freaking awesome. And like it made Summers like this overnight sensation. Like all of a sudden everyone's throwing offers at him. And what's the movie he does right after this? The Mummy Returns. These are the only two movies in this Mummy franchise I can stand. The first one is obviously the best. It's just fun and fast-paced, and just the characters are really likable, and it's just really cool. I love it a lot. And the second one is basically more of what you loved in the first movie. It's just amped up to 11. Suddenly, that martial arts thing from The Matrix worked its way in here too. You got people in ancient Egypt doing martial arts with size like Raphael from the Ninja Turtles. Yeah, I've talked about it on my stream a couple times. Fuck Google. I don't know if it's this particular one. It might have been. I don't remember. I talked about it once. I'm a huge Star Trek fan, and I was really sad that Nemesis was like the final Next Generation movie. So, in like 2005, I started to write a sequel to Nemesis, and I finished it, and I thought it was pretty decent. I thought out of all the things that I had written, story wise, like script wise, I'd also written like a Killer Instinct script and a Shadowrun script. And out of all the scripts that I tried to write, I thought that the Star Trek one was my best one. And then the hard drive that I had to start on failed, and I lost it completely. So I want to say like 4 years ago, I tried to rewrite it from memory, and I'm still writing it now. But it's turned into something completely different, so I feel your pain about losing that shit. But Mummy Returns, it's fun, it's cool, it's just way more CGI than is needed. I want to say it's just like overboard on the CGI. Because you got a bigger budget doesn't mean you need to throw more CGI at the screen. Because that CGI Scorpion King at the end of the movie is one of the worst freaking things I've ever seen. That's almost as bad as what Reptile looked like in the first Mortal Kombat movie. And that's saying something. Yeah. But it is fun. It's just not nearly as good as the first one. The third one I saw in the theater, and I could not stand the third one at all. I was just like, no. Without Rachel Weisz in these movies, it does not work. And I think the thing about the third one that pissed me off the most was the fact that you have Jet Li and Michelle Yeoh in the same movie, two like Hong Kong martial art films legends who have never actually had an on-screen fight before in any Hong Kong movie. You have them in the same movie, and you have them fight for 3 seconds. What the hell? I was pissed. I was like, you have these two freaking amazing martial arts in the same movie, and you have them like kick at each other for 3 seconds, and then one of them gets knocked off whatever they're fighting on, and it's over. Holy shit, I was so mad. Anyway, Murder on the Orient Express. When this came out, I really didn't have any intention of seeing it. It's a adaptation of an Agatha Christie story, and I want to say it's probably been done into a movie like twice before. I really had no interest in seeing it, but I think this came out over Thanksgiving, whatever year it was released, and I went to visit my mother for Thanksgiving, and it was like one of the few times she was like, how about we spend all day at the movies? So we saw like 3 movies in the same day, and this was one of them. She wanted to see it, so I went with her, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was kind of fantastic. It's like a murder mystery on a train, and it has a great cast. It's Kenneth Branagh playing Hercule Poirot. You got Penelope Cruz, Willem Dafoe, Judi Dench, Johnny Depp, Josh Gad, Leslie Odom, Michelle Pfeiffer, and freaking Daisy Ridley. One of the most adorable actresses in the history of film. But I really enjoyed it. I had seen bits and pieces of other versions of this from the past, as well as the movie that is the sequel to this novel. I think it was Murder Under the Sun or Evil Under the Sun. I think that's the one. Oh no, that's Death on the Nile. I've seen Evil Under the Sun. I saw that on cable back in the day because that came out like in the 80s. But really fun, and I really look forward to the sequel to this that they're doing because that one made a killing at the box office. No, don't go! I was just talking to Captain Foley about this last night. Captain Foley was doing a stream, the Captain Foley from Trek Yards. He was doing a stream all about 80s movies. He just wanted to talk about 80s movies, and I just kept throwing movie names at him to see if he had seen them, like Looker and like obscure ones. And he started talking to me about 3D Blu-rays and how like when he sees me talk about a 3D Blu-ray is when he goes out and looks for it. And I was like, he was talking about Drive Angry in 3D, and I was like, I saw it in the theater in 3D. I don't own it on Blu-ray or 3D Blu-ray. I got the hiccups all of a sudden. I was like, but the people who made Drive Angry previously made My Bloody Valentine 3D, and that has some of the best 3D around. So Avatar had just come out. Avatar like made a killing at the box office, reintroduced 3D to everybody, showed you how to do it. I didn't think the 3D in Avatar was very good. I thought it was just, I was expecting things poking me in the eye and not all this depth of field stuff. So naturally, everyone starts to jump on the 3D bandwagon, and this was one of the first movies that did. And it was designed to be in 3D from the start, and it was designed to be one of those movies where shit is poking you in the eye all the time. So I went and saw this opening night with a girl that I was hanging out with at the time, and absolutely everything about this movie worked in 3D. It is so good. On video in 3D, it's not nearly as impressive as it was in the theater, but I can't complain because even without the 3D, it's still a fantastic like slasher film. It's a remake of a Canadian slasher from the 80s about a guy that dresses up like a miner and goes around and kills people with a pickaxe in like this small mining town. This is reimagined. It's completely different from what the original one was, but it's still pretty cool. I liked it a lot. I was hoping we would get some sort of a sequel to this. Even though this made a killing at the box office, they never did go through with the sequel, which kind of saddened me, because I would have continued to watch this, storyline continue. But it had some of the best 3D around, and I'm just sad that it didn't hold up as well on home video. And then I've got another collector's edition. This is the can't talk Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie. I remember I was a huge fan of Mystery Science Theater when it first started broadcasting, with Joel as the lead character. And once Mike showed up, I kind of lost interest in it. I didn't think he was nearly as funny or dry as Joel was. I thought Joel was just more entertaining to watch, and Mike was just kind of like, hey guys, let's go. Anyway, I'm out of Gatorade, y'all. I'm going to die. So when this came out in the theater, I really wasn't all that interested. But my friend Charlie was. I remember we were seeing commercials for this on Comedy Central all the time, and he was like, we got to go see it. And I was like, I don't really want to. So we skipped it. It didn't really actually play anywhere near me. So I would have had to drive like into downtown Chicago to see it, and we're not willing to do that. So I waited until video to check it out, and I really liked it. I was surprised I enjoyed it as much as I did. It helped that they actually picked a good movie to make fun of instead of like some schlocky movie that they normally would pick on the TV show. I was going to say, if they had to pay good money to get a movie to rag on, they were going to get something good. So they picked This Island Earth, which I remember watching all the time as a kid. It was one of my dad's favorite old school science fiction movies, so I saw it multiple times, so I knew the movie while they were watching it. And they ragged on it as well as complimented it at the same time, which I thought was kind of cool that they actually recognize that it's actually a good B movie. But it's fun. I like it. We have Nacho Libre. Okay, so the guy who did Napoleon Dynamite, this was his follow-up movie, and I didn't think he could do it twice, but he did. I really enjoyed Napoleon Dynamite, regardless of how stupid it is. It's just so ridiculous that I can't help but laugh at it. It's just so off the wall. It's just funny to me. And the same with this. But the thing is, having Jack Black playing the lead character with that bad accent and everything, like, I still quote this movie. There's a guy that I work with who is, he's way taller than me, kind of heavier. And I always say to him, it's like, Chancho, let me borrow some suedes. And he just laughs at me. He's like, you're an idiot. This is the first time I think I'd ever heard somebody use the word douche in a movie. When Jack Black calls the big wrestler guy that he's been looking up to a complete ass because he saw him acting like a jerk in town. He's like, yeah, that guy's a real douche. That just cracks me up. Everything about it cracks me up. Some toast? Yeah. Come on, Encarnacion. I love it when he tries to eat that gruel that he's been making, and when he takes a bite, he goes, it's not that bad. And he takes a bite of it and it shoots out his nose. And speaking of Nacho Libre, we got the Napoleon Dynamite. I remember I used to go to Ain't It Cool News all the time back when this came out, and every time I would log on, there would just be nothing but ads for this all over the website. And I was like, what the hell is this movie that they're talking about? Ignacio. Yeah, I can't get enough of it. So when it came to home video, I was like, finally, I'll watch this movie, see what everyone's talking about. Because I remember, it was such a big hit, like a big indie hit, that they went back and shot more stuff for, an additional theatrical release that they did. Like, they re-released the movie in the theater with new footage. And it was that wedding thing that happens after the end credits. And I was like, that movie was that popular that they felt they had to do that? I was like, I gotta watch this. So I rented it. And I want to say, the first time I watched it, I didn't get it. I was like, what am I watching? But I kept on giggling at it for some reason. And then my dad was like, oh, you rented that Napoleon Dynamite movie? Can I watch it before you return it? And I was like, yeah, sure. So he watched it. And I remember I came downstairs to get something to eat. And I heard it playing. So I sat down and I didn't get up. I watched the whole movie with him again. And that time I watched it, I was just laughing and laughing and laughing. I was like, okay, it's not supposed to make sense. It's just a bunch of weird shit happening and it's just hysterical. And it became one of my favorite movies. And I quote this to my friends all the time. We went to my friends and I went to a restaurant. There's this pizza place by where I work. And we went there for lunch one day. And the options you have when you get a burger or a sandwich is you can get crinkle cut fries, you can get steak fries, you can get spaghetti, or you can get tater tots. And whenever somebody at our table orders tater tots, I was like, hey, can I have some of your tots? Everyone's like, shut up! Don't quote that movie to me. And then we have, I think, is another Diamond in the Rough. And I used to do these movie marathons in my apartment. When I first moved into this apartment, I would have these like movie marathons because a lot of my friends hadn't seen a lot of older films. Like I say older, I'm talking like from the 80s and stuff. So I was trying to like introduce some of my favorite movies from that era to them. So I would do these like movie marathons where we show like 4 movies in a row that were kind of themed similarly. So I decided to do like a vampire movie night. And I showed Near Dark. Everyone that was watching it hated it. Like everyone absolutely hated it. This is directed by Catherine Bigelow, who directed the Hurt Locker. She won an Oscar for that movie. This was the first movie she ever directed. James Cameron was her husband at the time. He produced it for her. And a lot of the cast that he had just worked with on Aliens came over to work with her on this movie. So it's got Lance Henriksen, Jeanette Goldstein, Bill Paxton, like a lot of people from Aliens. I think the same crew that worked on Aliens worked on this. But it's a low-budget vampire movie. The vampires don't actually have fangs. They just like tear a chunk of your neck off and like suck the blood out. But the thing is, they are trying to make this, for whatever reason, look like Twilight on the cover. Because they have the lead character up here looking all pale, and the girl down here looking all, healthy human. It's the other way around. She's the vampire. She's trying to turn him into one. Nobody's pale in this movie. Everyone just looks normal. That's the whole appeal of it. But basically, this dude Caleb sees this hot girl walking around town one night, walks up to her, picks her up. They start making out. She bites him. Doesn't really suck his blood. She just bites him while they're making out. And he starts to slowly turn into a vampire. So the group of vampires that she's with, which is Lance Henriksen, Bill Paxton, Jeanette Goldstein, and Jason Patrick's little brother, they kind of like kidnap him to decide if they're going to keep him in the group or not as he slowly turns into a vampire. And it's really cool. It's really interesting. A lot of the rules applied from the normal vampire movies, like sunlight. The crosses don't really seem to do anything. But fire will kill them. Sunlight is the most appropriate thing they use in the movie. It's just a really clever, different take on a vampire movie. It's like a vampire western almost. I love it. It's fantastic. And like the thing was, nobody picked up on any of the stuff that I liked about it when we were watching it. And then when it was over, everyone was like, well, let's just move on to the next one because that was a bust. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that movie's fantastic. You're like, nah, it kind of sucked. I'm like, okay, whatever. I still need to pick up the first movie in this series, but I picked up this triple feature from, what's the name of the company? Vestron. Vestron was like a big direct-to-video company back in the 80s and 90s. They released theatrical movies too every once in a while. They are the people that did they released Dirty Dancing. And they tried to make a comeback. They're releasing like all they I don't know if somebody bought the rights to the name Vestron, but they bought the library from Vestron's like direct-to-video library, and they've been releasing these like Vestron special editions of like their films. So they released this 3-pack. That's 3 of the Nemesis movies on one disc. Or is it one disc? Yeah, it's on one disc. It even comes with a fold-out poster. Oh my goodness! So if you ever seen Nemesis, it was by Albert Pyun, who's like the king of like schlock cinema. He did the first Nemesis movie with Olivier Grenier. I don't know how to say his last name. And I saw it on video, on home video, and it was okay. It was like a cyberpunk action movie with martial arts in it. It was okay. I thought it was okay. And then I remember seeing ads for like the sequel coming out, and it was going to only be playing for like one weekend in a limited number of theaters. So I convinced my brother. I'm like, hey, remember that Nemesis movie that we saw on home video like, a while back? And he's like, yeah, the sequel's playing like tomorrow night only. You want to go see it? And he was like, yeah, let's go. So he went and saw Nemesis 2, which is all about this bodybuilder girl who is sent from the future into the past to hide from these killer cyborgs who are trying to kill her because she was genetically engineered and the robots are afraid of her. The robots kind of run the future, kind of like the Terminator. And one of them comes back to hunt her in the past. It's called Nebula, and it's played by Chad Stahelski, who directs all the John Wick movies. And it's like a gigantic chase movie through Africa. Like she gets like adopted by like an African tribe and raised as one of them. But for some reason, she grows up to be this huge bulking bodybuilder, and she's being hunted by this robot the whole movie. It's just this giant chase movie, and it's stupid and it has no plot, but it is actually really fun. It's just a silly little action movie, and like the action scenes are actually pretty well choreographed, probably because Chad Stahelski had something to do with it. And it's just goofy and it's fun and it's kind of harmless, and we enjoy. My brother and I both were like, that was stupid, but it was fun as hell. And when the movie ends, it says coming next year, Nemesis 3, time lapse or something. And it never went to theaters. It went direct to video. And I watched part 3 when it came to video. I was really excited because I was like, I wonder where they're going to take the story because the last one ended on a cliffhanger. And it was awful. It is just awful. And it feels like a direct to video movie, even though they filmed it to be theatrical. It is awful. And it was like when Albert Pune was like, he was like at his best for part 2, but he was like at his worst for part 3. And then for no reason, out of nowhere, I remember I went to a video store and I saw Nemesis 4 sitting there. It's called like Cry of Angels or something. Yeah, Cry of Angels. And they all feature the same actress, the big bodybuilder one. Except the whole point of the movie is now she's not really this superhuman person who's here to kill, or who was there to hide, who was sent to the past to hide from robots. She's like assassin of robots or cyborgs or whatever. And she is naked the whole movie, and giant needles come out of her nipples, and she stabs people with them. And I remember watching it going like, did they come up with this movie in like an hour or something? They had like a little brainstorming session about a Nemesis 4. Like they came up with this plot in an hour because it feels like it. It is not a movie. It is just like the random things thrown onto film. It's just so bad. I basically bought this because it was the only way I can get a copy of Nemesis 2 on Blu-ray. So there's that. And then we have The Neverending Story. Shouldn't need to talk about this all that much. It's a classic. It's a German movie that was actually like half reshot to be in English. But we watched this on my podcast this past season, season 3 for the movie starting. It's still fantastic. It still holds up. Really great family film. Here's another one that not a lot of people know about. It's called Night of the Comet. I absolutely loved it. Oh, your mom? That's the thing I quote to everybody, Peter. Someone at work starts talking about like, well, when I was in college, I go, your mom goes to college. Every single time. Never fails. Anyway, Night of the Comet is this 80s movie that I thought was pretty fantastic. Okay, so like I keep on saying, I was not allowed to watch horror movies when I was a little kid. I didn't actually watch a full-on horror movie, like an R-rated one, until 1999 or 1989 maybe, with Hellraiser 2. That was the first one I actually sat through. But I managed to convince my dad to take me to see this when this came out in, 84? Yeah, 84. I was like, I need to see that movie. That looks so cool. My dad's like, I don't think you can handle it. It's PG-13. He's like, in 84, I was 9. He's like, I don't think you can handle it, Chris. And I was like, no. It looks like a science fiction movie. I love science fiction movies. Let's go see it. So my dad takes me to see it. And halfway through the movie, I flipped out in the theater because I was scared to death. And I looked at my dad. I'm like, we have to go right now. And my dad starts laughing his ass off. He's like, okay, I knew this was going to fucking happen. And he drags me out of the theater. And we're walking out. And I just remember my dad laughing. And I was like, what's so funny? He's like, I knew this was going to happen. I told you weren't going to like it. So naturally, it comes to home video. I tell my dad, I'm like, look, I want to watch it. Can I please watch it? Like all the way through this time. And he's like, are you going to like walk away from it like a baby? And I was like, no. I'm like, fine. I sat through the whole thing. I was like, yeah, I was stupid. I screwed up. Basically, a comet passes the Earth, and anyone who's not inside of a steel structure turns to dust. It kills everyone on the planet that isn't like inside some sort of a steel structure. They show these two sisters. One of them slept with a dude at a movie theater one night, and the projection booth is like a steel room, so it protects them. And the sister ended up having a fight. Her little sister ended up having a fight with her stepmom and ends up like sleeping in the shed out back, which is made out of steel. So they both survive. And it's about them like trying to come to terms with the fact that they're like survivors of the apocalypse. And there's probably not a lot of people left in the world. But people who are partially protected from the comet's effect turn into like these zombies who are slowly turning into dust that crave flesh. So there's like this zombie thing going on at the same time too. It is really good. It's really funny. The two sisters, like their chemistry is fantastic. One of the sisters is played by Catherine Mary Stewart, who was the love interest in The Last Starfighter, and Kelly Maroney plays the other one, and she was in Chopping Mall. And you can see Kelly Maroney on the back. You might recognize her. Their chemistry is like fantastic. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is actually based off of Kelly Maroney's character. Joss Whedon has actually said that. They play off each other so well. The comedy is great, but when it's scary, it can be scary. Like there's a part where they find another survivor, and it's Robert Beltran, who played Chakotay on Voyager. He finds them at this radio station where they're trying to like send out a broadcast to see if there's any survivors. And he's like, I'll be back. I need to go see if my mother's alive. So he goes to his mother's house, and while he's there, he finds all their remains, like the dust of their remains. And he hears like someone scratching at the front door. When he opens the door, there's a little kid zombie standing there just growling at him. And that was when I said, I need to get out of here right now. I need to get out of here right now, Dad. And like now I watch it, and the kid's going like, and I laugh when I watch it now because I was stupid. But it's a really fun apocalyptic movie. It's really fun. Oh, have a good night, FG. Glad to see that you came. Yeah, it scared the shit out of me. And then like I convinced my dad to take me like 2 years later. Same thing. I convinced my dad to take me to see Poltergeist 2 in the theater because I watched the first one because it was PG. It was okay. Part 2 was PG-13, and I was in '86. I was 11, and I convinced him to do. And I almost did the exact same thing when the dad was puking up the worm thing in Poltergeist 2. I was like, "We need to get out of here." And Dad's like, "Nope, we are staying." Nowadays, that would probably be considered child abuse. But my dad was like, I am not leaving. And then I ended up doing the same thing to my brother, like I said, when we saw Candyman in that stream from the C through D movies. Anyway, the original Night of the Living Dead. This is the Criterion Collection, and I found this on Amazon. They were having, I don't know if it was a glitch on the website or something, but like Criterion Collection stuff, like they start off at like $40-$50. And they don't usually decrease until like years later. And, excuse me, I picked this up maybe less than a year after it was released. And I found it for $12 on their website. And I was like, that can't be right. But you know what? I am not going to pass that up because I will probably never find it for that price again. Then, nope. And it's fantastic. I prefer the original over the remake. I don't hate the remake. I think the remake is good. It does its own thing while still being what this is. But it definitely 80s it up. It makes Barbara into more of a Sarah Connor Ripley type character, which I thought was really cool. I just wish it was played by a better actress. But for like the first ever zombie movie, or legit zombie movie, this is kind of amazing and still holds up and is still pretty creepy. Like that scene where they're walking up, like the main characters are walking up the stairs to check out the top floor of the house that they're all hiding in, and there's just that painting. I mean, it's a painting. It's supposed to be like it should have been a model or like a physical effect, but it was just like a painting that somebody made of that person who's been ripped apart by the zombies, and it looks so real. Like every time I see it, I go like, ugh. It just looks so creepy. But it's a fantastic movie. I need to watch it again. I still haven't opened it, but I have seen this probably 12 times. I mean, I love it. And I talked about Day Watch in the C through D stream. Here's the movie that came before it, Night Watch. It's a Russian science fiction, horror, action, martial arts, special effect bonanza film. It's based on there's a series of books. There's Night Watch, Day Watch, Twilight Watch, and Last Watch. Night Watch and the sequel movie Day Watch are still based on the first book, Night Watch. Like, this movie is based on like the first 3 chapters of that book, and Day Watch is based on the next 3 chapters of the first book. They never even got into any of the other books. But it's a crazy Russian movie. I won tickets to go and see a sneak preview of this and in the city, and I missed out on it. And I also won tickets to see the sequel, Day Watch, as a sneak preview, and I missed out on it too. I just got there too late because the traffic was bad. But it's crazy. It's just nonstop CGI and crazy camera angles and shit. Timur Bekmambetov directed this in Day Watch, and he ended up coming to America. He made Wanted. He made Abraham Lincoln Vampire Killer, or Vampire Hunter, and something else too. There's something he made pretty recently. I can't remember what it was though. But yeah, this is the movie that got him noticed and actually put like Russian films on the map again. Like nobody really gave a shit for a while, and then showed that they can actually compete with Hollywood because it feels like a huge budget movie. This had a tiny budget. I don't know how they got away with half the stuff they did in this movie, how they pulled it off. But it's pretty fun. It's just absolutely crazy. It's just nuts. Vampires, werewolves, end of the world scenarios, lots of birds. Here's just a concert DVD or Blu-ray that I have. It's 9 Inch Nails, Live Beside You in Time. This, I do believe, came out around the same time as the one that had Hand That Feeds on it. Yeah, that album. Came out like in 2009-ish, I want to say, 2008, 2009. But it's just a concert video, 9 Inch Nails. I love 9 Inch Nails. Industrial music is my favorite music genre, so 9 Inch Nails is they're like the godfathers of industrial music, so why not? Here's another movie I brought up in Captain Foley's 80s movie stream last night. I brought it up, and the way I put it, I was like, has anyone heard of this movie? And everybody's like, no. And I go, how could you not know of this movie? It's about an aerobics instructor who gets possessed by a ninja and seduces a cop by pouring V8 down her cleavage. Yep. Ninja 3: The Domination. Back in the early to mid 80s, Canon Films, the people who did Life Force and Masters of the Universe that I talked about earlier, decided to start doing all these ninja movies, and they made ninjas. They were the ones who made ninjas popular, like in the 80s. Like, you wouldn't have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles if it wasn't for Canon Films bringing them out of nowhere and just making them popular. They did Enter the Ninja, and then they did Revenge of the Ninja, which also starred Sho Kosugi, who was in the first movie. He never plays the same character in any of these movies. In the first movie, Enter the Ninja, he plays the villain. In Revenge of the Ninja, he plays the hero. In Ninja 3, he's just kind of there. It's not about him. It's about Lucinda Dickey, who was in all the Breakin' movies. This was the first movie she made. This before she did Breakin'. And she plays an aerobics instructor who moonlights as for someone who works for the phone company and fixes like the phone lines. There's this big action scene at the beginning of the movie where a ninja kills a whole bunch of mafia people on a golf course, ends up getting shot like 85 million times and survives, and then eventually finds her in the desert working on a phone line and possesses her. And whenever he wants to get revenge on one of the cops who killed him, he takes over her body poltergeist style. And I'm not kidding, like, she's in bed one day and her fucking closet opens up and this bright light comes out and possesses her, just like in Poltergeist. Oh, are you playing Slave Zero? I'm so proud of you, Cap. Anyway, yeah, she literally seduces a cop by sitting on his lap, leaning back, and pours V8 all over her cleavage. And he licks it off of her, no joke. It's beyond cheesy, but it's awesome at the same time. That's a timeout. We actually watched this on the Movie Starting podcast this season. It is so much fun. I watched this all the time as a kid. I didn't realize how bad this was as a kid. I was just like, hot girls and ninjas in the same movie. Yes, 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 yes. And I didn't realize that it was ripping off like Poltergeist and The Exorcist and all these other movies. But it's just stupid, goofy fun, and I absolutely love it. And when the moment I found out that Scream Factory was going to be releasing this on Blu-ray, I was like, yes, I am pre-ordering that. I actually have the poster of this artwork that came with this when I bought it hanging on my wall. You can't really see it, but it's by my door over here. It is fantastic. It is so bad, but it is good. It's incredible bad. But it's so awesome. And continuing with the ninja theme, I have Ninja Assassin. This was produced by the Wachowskis and directed by James McTeague, who did V for Vendetta. And my brother and I went and saw this Thanksgiving, the year that it was released, and we both walked out of that theater going like, that was the ultimate ninja movie. That had everything you could ever want in a ninja movie. It was just nonstop action, crazy violence. It was absolutely nuts, and we loved it. It stars Rain, who's a Korean pop star playing a ninja. Okay, whatever. But he was in Speed Racer, the Wachowski Speed Racer movie, which I also do love, and I think nobody gives it the respect it deserves. They worked with him in that movie, and they liked working with him so much that they were like, hey, we've devised this ninja film. We're not going to direct it, but we would love for you to be involved in it somehow. And he's like, I want to play the lead. And as an homage to all of these ninja movies that I was talking about that Canon made in the 80s, they cast Sho Kosugi, he was in every one of those, as the villain in this movie, which I was like over the moon that they cast him. You have no idea. When I saw his name pop up in the credits, I was like, we've made it. It is so much fun. I love it. It's just nonstop violence and action. What's not to like? And it has Naomi Harris in it, who I think is beyond hot. So Captain Algebra was on the podcast that I do with Jason of Corpse Flood Gaming, the Super Enabler Brothers show, and we do the backlog roulette at the end of every episode. We have a list of games that correspond with the numbers on this roulette wheel that Jason had bought, and at the end of every episode, he rolls the roulette wheel. Whatever number it lands on, we play the corresponding number on our list of, with the games on it. And Captain got Slave Zero in the last episode. Here's another ninja movie, and it's Ninja Scroll, one of my all-time favorite animes. This came out in the 90s at that point in time where like it was still kind of new to everybody, but I was working at that video store I keep talking about back in the day. Ghost in the Shell just came out, and there was a trailer at the beginning of Ghost in the Shell that showed all the anime that they were going to be releasing. I think it was Manga Entertainment. They were going to be releasing all these different anime movies over the next year or so, and it was set to my favorite song of all time, Ultra by KMFDM, which was what got my attention to start. And they keep showing stuff from Ninja Scroll in that trailer, and I was like, oh, must see! So the day it came out on video, I bought it, ran over to my friend Charlie's house, Epic Die Studio, and we watched it, and holy shit, it is the end-all be-all of anime back then, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, it was one of the first ones. I had seen Uratsuka Doji before this. You all remember the Uratsuka Doji story. But, yeah, there's some crazy shit that goes on in here, like sexual stuff that's just kind of like, what? No, why are you doing that? No, don't do, no. But the character that does the sexual assault gets his comeuppance in awesome fashion. But it's a fantastic anime movie that would have made a fantastic video game. Someone dropped the ball on that completely. This is probably going to get talked about in my next movies that would make great video games collaboration. This is going to be one of the movies I pick. It's a fantastic action-oriented anime. It's great. All the different... It's almost like Boss Rush the movie. It's just all these crazy ninjas with all these crazy powers. The lead character, Jubei, has to cut his way through. And each one of them has their own unique things that they do. And it is just so cool. It's just nonstop. The Ninth Gate. I have bought and sold this movie more times than I can count. It's a Roman Polanski movie that I saw in the theater when it was first released. And it got decent reviews. But I was like, I want to at least see one Roman Polanski movie in the theater. I always catch his movies on TV or on video or whatever. I was like, I want to at least see one. And Johnny Depp wasn't like known as he was back then in the day. Back then, Johnny Depp was known as like the independent movie guy. So seeing him in like a bigger budget movie before Pirates of the Caribbean, was actually like something. So I was like, let's go see that. I said to one of my friends, let's go see that Ninth Gate movie. So I went and saw it. And I didn't realize at the time that it's kind of like a black comedy. So Johnny Depp is like this antique books dealer who is like a con artist. Like he goes to evaluate like a book collection of somebody who died, and he tries to ascertain if the people who are looking, like, it's always like the family members of whoever died and was collecting these books, and he always tries to ascertain if the people who are selling the books in lieu of the person who died are smart enough to realize that they have some stuff in their collection that's really worth like a lot of money, and he cons them out of stuff that's super expensive for super cheap. And he ends up finding out that there's like this devil Bible that is out there somewhere that's worth a ton of money, and he tries to go looking for it. Someone actually hires him to go looking for it, and he kind of wants it for his own so he can like sell it on the side. But it turns into this whole thing where he's like a part of the second coming of Satan on Earth, and he's involved in it. I thought it was creepy. It has a great score. The same guy did the music for Bram Stoker's Dracula, the one that came out in the 90s, did the score for this too, and it's a great score that really sets the mood for it. I listen to it every once in a while. It still holds. It's still creepy as hell. When I was watching it, I was like, why is this movie not really taking itself too seriously? Like, it's got these goofy scenes with Johnny Depp acting kind of weird and stuff, and it has like every once in a while the music will go like do 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 type of thing. I'm like, I don't understand. But then when I watched it the second time, I was like, okay, it's a black comedy. It's not taking itself seriously on purpose. I'm like, okay, I get it. And it's really good. It has a really funny moment where Frank Langella, who was the bad guy in the movie, does this one thing where he thinks that he's invulnerable and he really isn't, and it's just the look on his face every time I see it. I laugh my ass off because it's great. Like, Frank Langella is a really underappreciated actor, but it's a really cool movie. There's a lot of nudity in it, but it's a pretty cool take on like an apocalyptic like Satan movie. I got the phlegms. Then we got No Country for Old Men. This is by the Coen brothers. And I remember my brother went and saw this in the theater, and he was singing its praises for like months and months. Why haven't you gone to see it yet? Why haven't you gone to see it yet? I was like, I'll wait for video, dude. I'm like, and I finally saw it on Netflix. Like Netflix, I got the disc from Netflix, and I watched it, and I was like, yep, should have gone to see it in the theater. It's just a really interesting, like, drama thriller about getting old. And just so happens there's a serial killer walking around poking people in the head with like this air compression gun of his. It's pretty cool. I like it a lot. I need to start powering through some of these movies because I'm getting toward the end and another 3-hour freaking stream. I thought I didn't have enough movies to talk about, but yeah, having to use the toilet in the middle of the stream didn't help. Anyway, I found a 4K version of Oblivion. This is one of my favorite Tom Cruise films because the trailers did not ruin the twists. Normally, for some reason, the studios want to give away the entire movie in the trailers. And I thought that had happened in the trailer by revealing Morgan Freeman in it because they made him look like he was the villain. And then you watch the movie and you realize the trailer, or the stuff that you saw in the trailer, is from the first half of the movie, and you're still the whole second half of the movie you know nothing about. And that really went a long way with me. I was just like, okay, finally, I'm watching a movie that I don't know what to expect because the trailer ruined most of it. It's a really awesome science fiction movie from the guy who directed Tron Legacy, where basically life on Earth has been wiped out, and there's these aliens that had come to attack our planet, and you're made to think one thing about them, and it turns out to be something totally different. You're made to think that everyone on Earth left to look for water, and Tom Cruise and this girl that he works with were left behind on Earth to gather the remaining water that's left on the planet to take to whatever planet the Earth everyone else had gone to. Turns out to not be the case, and it has this really awesome twist about halfway through that they do not ruin in the trailer. Thank you. And it's just it's a great movie. It's well made. The special effects are fantastic. The score is great. Tom Cruise is like one of the best acting jobs I've seen from Tom Cruise in a movie. He starts off doing his like little everyman thing, but then once he realizes that everything he knows is like a lie, it's like he completely changes it up, and it's just really interesting to watch, and it has a great ending, and it's fantastic. I watch this one a lot, and I ended up seeing this in the theater by myself. My girlfriend at the time was not available, and I was out in the burbs visiting my parents, and I went and saw it after I was done with that, and I liked it so much I convinced my girlfriend, I'm like, we need to go see this. You need to see this movie. And when it was over, she was like, I'm so glad you took me to see that. That was so good. And we have the two, there's 3 of them, but I only have the first 2 because I didn't think the third one was all that great, and I'm not obsessed enough with these movies to want to get all of them. But Ong Bak, the Thai warrior, it was just called Ong Bak. And then I have Ong Bak 2, The Beginning, which is the prequel. Doesn't really have anything to do with anything. But I remember on IGN, they did a review of this movie, Ong Bak, and they were like, this is the new resurgence of martial arts movies because we've never really seen Muay Thai fighting in a movie to this extent before. And this guy, Tony Jaa, is the shit. Like, you need to see him work. You need to see him do these crazy Jackie Chan stunts. He jumps through, like, this ring of barbed wire and, like, folds himself literally in half to squeeze through this, like, ring of barbed wire that's seriously this big around. And he doesn't even touch the barbed wire once. He just jumps through it, folds himself in half, and, like, squeezes through. It's like, how did he do that? And he does all these crazy stunts. He was like the new Jackie Chan, but does serious movies. And my friend and I were like, I think we need to go see this. So we went and saw it, and yeah, we were both like blown away. It was like all of a sudden martial arts movies were a thing with me again. It's kind of fantastic. Tony Jaa was like the new it guy, and I could not wait to see if he moved to America and started doing American movies. He has, but he always ends up being like a little bit part. Like he was in Fast and the Furious 7 or Furious 7. He's in that Monster Hunter movie that they have coming out with Mila Jovovich, but he hasn't really done much. I think he still makes movies every once in a while in Thailand. So because this became such a huge hit, Tony Jaa got enough money to make a part 2 and part 3, which he shot back to back, and he directed this one. And the thing about it is that during the making of these 2 movies, he lost his mind, had like a nervous breakdown, and went and lived in the jungle for a little while, and basically the production on the films stopped. And then eventually, like, the producers and the people that put up the money were like, someone needs to go into that jungle and find his punk ass and bring him out here to finish this movie. And he did, but he was, like, not the same. Eventually, like, he got his shit back together. But it was like he, like, lost his mind for a little bit. But, yeah, it's like it really isn't connected to this at all. This was just a story about, like, a guy who, a statue of his got stolen from his village, and he goes back into the city to reclaim it, and ended up in, like, Fight Club type thing. Or, like, underground Muay Thai fight clubs. And this is all about, like, the history of, like, why the Thai people are obsessed with elephants and stuff. It's just weird. But it's not bad. The third one, like, I watched half of it, and I was just like, you can tell that he was losing his mind while he was making that one. It's not that good. I don't have the first movie in this franchise, but I saw the second one in the theater because I had seen the reviews, and it was like the first legit horror or PG-13 horror movie that got like great reviews in a long time. And they said you did not need to see this movie to see the first, or you did not need to have to see the first movie to see the sequel. I'd say watch the first Ong Bak. It's great. Ouija, Origin of Evil. This is the prequel to the Ouija movie that had come out like I think 2 years prior to this. And like all the critics were saying like this new Ouija movie is kind of fantastic. Like how do you get a movie this good, or how does a sequel this good come from a movie that was so bad? And I was like, I don't know. But I need to find out now that I'm intrigued. Because, like, Rotten Tomatoes, it was, like, sitting at, like, 85% or something on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, it was fantastic. I was like, okay, I think I need to go see this. Because I had no interest in the first one. I'm like, Clue was the only board game movie that worked. Battleship didn't do too well, and I heard the first Ouija was pretty bad, so I never bothered. So I went and saw this, and sure enough, it is kind of amazing. It is actually legit creepy. The acting in it is actually pretty good. It works. And it kind of made me want to go and watch the first movie because a lot of stuff in this is referenced to things that like things that are set up here happen in the original Ouija. I still never saw it. I don't think I need to see it. Well, the thing about this is the guy who directed it is Mike Flanagan, the guy who did Dr. Sleep and The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix and Oculus. He is a fantastic director, and they brought him in because of Oculus doing so well, and I love Oculus. I thought it was fantastic. Because of Oculus doing so well, they brought him in to basically write the franchise because they're like, yep, the first movie didn't turn out the way we wanted. How about you fix it for us? And he was like, okay. And he did, because this one is awesome. And it is legit creepy and disturbing at times, and I kind of wanted to go and watch the original Ouija, but I didn't because I heard it so bad. But I don't need to because I have this and it's fantastic. So if you're a fan of Mike Flanagan stuff, check that out. And the last movie, wow, another 3-hour stream, guys. Didn't think it was going to happen. The last movie I have to talk about tonight is Outlander, which I already talked about in a previous video because I have a signed DVD from the director in my other room. But if you were not present for that one, I'll give a quick rundown. It's essentially a monster movie with aliens in it. With Vikings. Jim Caviezel plays like this bounty hunter from outer space who is transporting this creature that is considered like super dangerous back to some people, and his ship crash lands on Earth back when the Vikings were still around. And they take him in, but the creature escapes, and the creature starts killing people in the Viking village, and he ends up being the only person who can really kill it. So he teams up with the Vikings to try to take this thing down. Ron Perlman is in it. John Hurt is in it. Yeah, the second Ouija movie is great. It is fantastic. Fuck the first one. Just watch the second one. You don't need the first one. But yeah, it feels at times like a Sci-Fi Channel movie, but it definitely had a budget. Like the story kind of feels like a Sci-Fi Channel movie, I guess. But my friend and I were like, should we go see that Outlander movie in the theater? It looked kind of cool. And I was like, I don't know, man. It kind of has that Sci-Fi Channel feel to it. And we were just kind of like, whatever. We'll just go check it out. There's nothing else playing. And we both walked out of the theater going like, yeah, it felt like a Sci-Fi Channel movie, but it was like a really good one. So both of us really enjoyed it. And enough to the point where my brother met with the director in Hollywood one day. My brother was collaborating with him on a movie that they were going to work on. And my brother was like, oh, my brother Chris is a big fan of your movie Outlander, you know. He goes, oh, you want him to sign something for him? And my brother was like, yeah, you have anything you can sign? So he pulled out like a stack of DVDs and signed one over to me, and my brother gave it to me as a gift. So it's pretty cool. It's Beowulf meets Predator. There you go. The little review blurb says it all. It's a fun little movie. Vikings and aliens. Why not? And that's it. Wow, I did not think this would go to 3 hours. Never fails. Thanks everybody for sticking around, even though I had my little tummy issues about halfway through. Really, there are? I had no idea. 6 more Ouija movies? I'm getting sick of those freaking Annabelle movies, guys. Oh, the Oz the Great and Powerful? I've never seen that in 3D. I'm not a fan of, I kind of lost interest in Sam Raimi movies after Spider-Man 3. So I never really bothered with them. Plus, I'm not really a big fan of The Wizard of Oz, even though I own the first movie, or the original movie. I should get a copy of Return to Oz if it's out there. But anyway, thank you everybody for sticking around, like I said, especially with my little stomach issue earlier on. IBS sucks. I'll be back next Thursday with another stream. I'm going to try to pare it down even more so I don't have another 3-hour stream. I thought I pared it. Like, seriously, this is not a lot of DVDs I talked about today. This is a lot less than I talked about last week. Then again, like I said, having to step away from the camera for a little while to take care of business kind of delayed things a little bit. But anyway, I'll be back next Thursday, 7 p.m. Central, for another one of these Film Collection live streams. I hope to see you all there again. Thank you very much for showing up, and I'll talk to you all later. Stay safe, please. I would like to see you back in my stream. Not sick. But have a good night, everybody. I'll talk to you later. Chris, the old-ass retro gamer, out.